Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the January 23rd, 2020 Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals meeting at 7:07. Jen, would you please call roll?
Chairman Dash.
Here.
Commissioner Kempa.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Here.
Commissioner Taman is absent by prior notice. Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Commissioner Mellon.
Here.
Commissioner Sayward. Here.
Okay, so let the record reflect that a quorum is present this evening. Our first agenda item is approval of minutes. To consider the meeting minutes from PZBA meeting on November 21st, 2019. Are there any comments, changes, or corrections to the minutes as presented this evening? Okay, if there are no changes, do I have a motion to approve the November 21st, 2019 PZBA minutes as presented?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Jen, roll call, please.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Abstained.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Mellon.
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Chairman Dash.
Aye. Okay, so there are no cases of old business, so we will go to our first case of new business. Okay, so our first new business case is PZBA zoning public hearing, case number ZBA 20-02, oh, excuse me. 01, I'm gonna do that one first. 01, and the applicant is Steery Trucking, Quality Truck Repair, at 33 East Palatine Road in Prospect Heights. And the applicant is seeking a variation request to allow the construction of a 6-foot open fence in the B3 Commercial, Wholesale, and General Services District, Section 5-3-4, H2C of the City of Prospect Heights zoning code. So I would like a motion, please, to open the public hearing on application number ZBA 20-01.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Voice vote, please. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so if you're here this evening to speak to the Steery Trucking case, you can stand. Is it just you, sir? Okay, so do you swear that the testimony you'll be giving this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, so Director Peterson, if you could,
The applicant, Steery Trucking, represented by Alex Kovakov, is here this evening seeking a variation for the front yard fence variation for the property they own at 2931 or 2933 Palatine. As you recall, last year, they were before us for a special use permit on text amendment for the lot next door that is owned by the airport. As part of the conditions of that special use text amendment, one of the conditions that was approved was they needed to secure their parking lot from unleased and truckers and owners to come into their property and illegally park. So in an effort to control the parking lot, Steery's here seeking a fence and a gate system, and that is not the fence proposed is not a permitted fence in a front yard in the industrial B3 district, so they're seeking a variation.
Yes, we're seeking to put up a fence so we can put a gate, because the gate has to be an open sliding gate and needs an additional fence.
great. The packet of information we received seemed to be pretty comprehensive. So, and there's no one here this evening to speak to this case? Okay, commissioners, any questions or comments?
Just one question for me, Director Peterson. As police and fire seen this proposal and they're okay with using a key code to access?
Yes, part of the conditions is that the applicant had to enter into an enforcement agreement, which will be approved on Monday night city council meeting, and then we'll bring it over. Ms. Krukov has agreed to it, and we will have full access.
And the gate that he's proposing complies with that access, the police and fire find the key entry proper way to go.
We'll make sure that as part of the actual permit to install, that it has the proper electronics and, if need be, manual override to get access.
Great.
Director Peterson, in your report, although staff is supporting this, it was suggested that we recommend that any plantings adjacent to the fence be restricted to a maximum height of 3 feet to ensure that there are no issues with sightlines in
That-
that location.
That is correct. It follows our other parking lot plantings requirements. We want to make sure that Palatine frontage egress and entrance from the site is well sighted and not a problem because of any shrubbery.
Okay, so we would need to include that as a condition of the recommendation?
Yes.
But to just clarify that point, you're only talking about the planting in front of the wrought iron fencing, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion by the commissioners? Okay, then I'd like a motion, please, to close the public hearing on application number ZBA 20-01.
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, I'd like a motion, please, to receive into the public record the staff review of compliance of this application with the zoning standards as presented by staff this evening, and to make these standards a part of the official record for the application.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Voice vote, those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, so I would like a motion, please, to recommend the city council approves the applicant's request seeking a variation variation request to allow the construction of a 6-foot open fence in the B3 Commercial, Wholesale, and General Services District, Section 5-3-4, H2C of the City of Prospect Heights zoning code, subject to the condition that plantings adjacent to the proposed wrought iron fence would not exceed 3 feet in height to ensure proper sight lines for ingress and egress from Palatine Road frontage.
Also move.
I'll second.
Jen, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Mellon.
Aye.
Chairman Dash.
Aye. So Dan, this matter will appear before the city council
On February the 10th for approval.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Got a lot of paperwork this evening. Okay, so our second case of new business is PZBA zoning public hearing case number ZBA 20-02. The applicant is Crown Castle, represented by Ray Schinkel from Insight. The address of the property is 10 East Camp McDonald Road, Prospect Heights, Illinois, 60070. The applicant is seeking to remove an existing monopole tower and replace it with a new, taller multi-tenant tower with exterior mounted antennas. And the applicant is seeking 3 items this evening. One would be a special use for a commercial communication tower per section 5-3-15G. The second would be a variation to section 5-3-15G1 in regards to height. And the third request is a variation to section 5-3-15G6, which would be distance from a residential district.
For a point of clarification, the applicant and owner of the tower already have a variation for the location in an R1. next to it that was granted in 1998. They are proposing to relocate it some feet for the reconstruction of the new pole, so that variation is still valid. So the variation for the height and the special use for the additional antennas is at question this evening.
So
The-
just two then, there's
Correct.
no, so they're not seeking a variation in regards to the distance from the residential district?
There was clarification that was brought forward on that point.
Okay, so it's just the first two, the special use for the commercial communication tower and the variation to our code in regards to height?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so I'd like a motion, please, to open the public hearing on application number ZBA 20-02.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so if you're here this evening to speak to this case, I can swear everybody in at the same time. So everyone who may choose to speak this evening, you can stand up. Do you swear that the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Right. So eventually, when you do testify, you'll just need to come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. So Director Peterson, if you could introduce this case, please.
Thank you. Last year, Crown Castle, represented by Insight, was here and proposed, had an application to install a new, taller pole with 3 exterior-mounted antenna arrays. During that public hearing, the applicant withdrew their application, and it was highly recommended at that time that the applicant, if they choose to come back with more of a concealment-style antenna, as the current antenna is a stealth-style antenna with all the antenna hardware within inside the case, the tube of the antenna. Crown Castle has come back with a proposal for a monopine, which in the information provided, which they'll go through this evening, looks like a pine tree with the antennas intermixed within that tree as the concealment. The technology they'll talk about, but that monopole is 22 years old at this time. So, that being said, Mr. Schinkel is here and his team from Insight to provide their testimony.
Thank you.
I do want to, I'm sorry, Ray, before we go forward, I do have an exhibit that was handed out that Mr. Schinkel provided, which is an actual picture of a monopine, and we will add that as Exhibit 7, and a location of that. So that was, if you could take one pass it, there's an address and then 2 pictures showing what that monopine would look like, which is actually constructed, I believe, in Olympia Fields.
Correct.
Just take one of these packets.
Yeah, just take one of the packets. I'll take a picture of
Okay,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, give me this memo here. So, and then also, just for the reference, what I did do so people could have a comparison is what was applied for last summer. I made a copy of the antenna diagram, which shows the tower with the exterior mounted array for comparison.
And we don't need to enter this into the,
No, that does not have to be
It's already
entered
on
as
the record.
exhibit because it was already as part of the record.
you can just take mine.
Great. Thank you,
I'll share
Director Peterson. Good evening, Chairman Dash, Commissioners. My name is Ray Schinkel. I'm here representing Crown Castle, and I did watch the video from the April 25th hearing, and I know that this commission was not thrilled about the full antenna array design, and asked Crown Castle to go back to the drawing board and see if they could come up with a different design that would be a little more aesthetically pleasing. That's what we've done so that we are going to present that monopine design to you. But knowing it's been 10 months since you've reviewed and we've discussed this material, I put a PowerPoint together that includes all the information that we provided tonight. And specifically what I want to talk about is why we feel this is the best and only site in this area and why it's so important. We have affidavits from RF engineers along with maps to demonstrate the need for these sites. We have a radio frequency engineer here tonight. His name is Chayton. He's with Sprint. He is here to answer any questions that you may have that I might not be able to answer. Once we go through that, then I can get into design. We can show you the photo simulations and pictures that we have, and I can answer any questions that you may have regarding the monopine design. So to start, I want to explain who Crown Castle is. They are the owner of the tower. They're one of the largest tower companies in the country. They have 25 years of experience of owning and managing towers. They have 5,000 employees and 100 offices. They own and manage over 40,000 towers and are currently building thousands of small cells and miles of fiber. They're an invaluable partner to these wireless carriers who they are working with every single day to see how their existing infrastructure and how their planned and future infrastructure can complement and help them build out their wireless networks. Because these wireless carriers are monitoring their networks every single day to keep up with an insatiable appetite that this country has for wireless communications. I'd be willing to bet everyone in this room has a phone just like this or very similar to it, and you use it every single day. And it's not just to make phone calls. It's to text. It's to email, access the internet, social media, send and watch videos, TV. All of this puts a tremendous amount of strain on the networks, and engineers like Chayton are monitoring it every single day to see where and how they can keep up with this demand. Moreover, more and more of us are seeing our landline as an unnecessary expense and cutting that, which is important because I put up some statistics here. Over 80% of 911 calls are made from wireless devices. So it's not just a matter of convenience or the network that these carriers promise in their marketing material. They have an obligation to keep up with this demand for the health and safety of the public. So why is this special use necessary? Excuse me, I have to get my glasses so bad. The city approved a special use to allow Sprint to erect a stealth tower over 20 years ago, but the tower is outdated. Not only does it restrict Sprint's use of the facility, but also restricts co-location of additional carriers in need of improving service in the area. The current code, your current city code, requires new towers to hold up to 3 wireless carriers, and this current site, as constructed, can barely hold 1. The proposed amendment will allow Sprint to utilize the site as well as add both Verizon and T-Mobile. The site is an island surrounded by residential. The closest existing structures, which I will get to later in this presentation, are where the carriers already have existing sites, which is why they all need to be here. It makes sense to augment the existing tower and address the coverage issue that only get worse over time. Now, in Prospect Heights zoning code requirements, it makes it clear that no commercial communication antenna shall be located within 500 feet of any zoning lot containing existing residential zoning district. I'm going to show you the majority of the towers, none of them meet this setback. This is a very difficult setback to meet, especially in a community like Prospect Heights that is so built out. Communication towers, including monopoles used from cellular PCS applications, shall be 3 carrier capable and shall be neutral in color, including antennas and mounting hardware. The purpose of that in your code was to promote co-location. I've been doing this since the late 90s, and I'm telling you, when the 1996 Telecom Act first came out, carriers were going out and building towers just for themselves. And the local municipalities realized, if you're going to build a tower, all these carriers are coming out, you have to build it to add additional carriers. Otherwise, you have 2, 3, 4 towers in the same spot. This is why this is in your code. Applicable federal law. This is what we all have to comply with, not only the carriers, but the local municipalities. The 1996 Telecom Act was passed. Local authorities shall not unreasonably discriminate among providers of functionally equivalent services. The Telecom Act was created so that there would be competition. Competition keeps prices low. shall not prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provision of wireless services, meaning a local municipality can't allow a carrier to come into one spot and prevent others from coming in and providing the same service. I know this came up at the hearing, so I felt like I should just bring it up. No state or local government or instrumentality thereof may regulate the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless service facilities on the basis of environmental effects, of radio frequency emissions to the extent that such facilities comply with the Commission's regulations concerning such emissions. What that means, as long as these carriers are operating within the guidelines set with the FCC, which all of them are at a fraction of the permissible levels, they are allowed to provide these services, and this cannot factor into the decision. These sites exist all over, on hospitals, steeples, church steeples, schools. They are part of our lifestyle. They're everywhere. They're part among the landscape. So I put an aerial photo here. The yellow pin represents the site that we're here tonight. And you can see it's surrounded by a sea of residential. There's not a lot of commercial, little slivers of business and commercial. This is not unusual. There's a lot of suburban communities that have this, that just don't have business or industrial or other types where we can locate these type of facilities. When these carriers try to penetrate these areas, hopefully there's an existing structure they can use. A rooftop, a water tank, a church steeple, a smokestack at a school, or even better, an existing communications tower. That's how that they cover these areas. I showed in the zoning map here, you have right in the center there, the red circle, that's our existing site where we're at tonight. The black circles surrounding that are all existing towers where the carriers are all located. You can see there's a big gap in between all those sites. Imagine covering a network is like building out a sprinkler system in your front yard, right? You have to have the sprinkler heads just overlapping with each other so they can cover a network. What's happened over the last decade, or the past couple decades, is that these areas are starting to shrink too because there's so much capacity on these sites. All those surrounding sites are operating at full capacity and they still can't keep up with the data crunch. So the only way these carriers can combat that is to add another site. But you don't add it where you already have coverage. You need to add it where in a particular area that can offload the coverage from these adjacent sites. So I'm going to go through this real quickly. You have the affidavits and you have the RF maps, but there's a few things that I want to highlight here. You have the Sprint RF engineer, which Jachane is here tonight. He's part of that team. I'm just going to read the highlighted section of their affidavit. The current tower, because Sprint is the existing carrier that's up there, the current tower does not allow to deploy new technology that will increase coverage and capacity in the community. We are experiencing a number of drop calls along East Rand, Oakton Street, Palatine, and North Elmhurst roads. There is a large number of wireless traffic in the area due to new subscriber growth and data-driven customers. The stress on the network will only increase over time. We must be able to upgrade the equipment at this location in order to maintain seamless service. Pretty powerful statement there. Now, these maps I'm going to go through, each one of them is a little different, but it's supposed to show you, kind of giving an indication of how you can see how where these holes are and how these sites fill in the gap. The one on the right, basically, if there was no coverage here whatsoever, you can see there's a lot of white, which is not good for RF. The one on the left is the existing coverage, but that's 1900 frequency only. Sprint spent millions of dollars at FCC auctions purchasing the rights to certain frequencies that make their network special, and they turn around and sell that to their customers. They have 1900 megahertz, 800 megahertz, and 2.5 gigahertz. All of that is part of their current and future technologies and vital to their network. Right now, because those antennas have to be a certain height and certain width, and they can only fit 3 in there, they are experiencing those drop calls. But they have no 800 megahertz coverage and 0 2.5. And that is why they're having these problems. All the surrounding sites where they're located has the full antenna array, and they are able to provide the service that they need and that they promise to their subscribers. Here's the RF affidavit here's a statement from the Verizon RF engineers. As shown in maps, Verizon Wireless has unreliable in-residence coverage in the residential area around the intersection of Elmhurst and Camp McDonald roads due to separation in existing sites. Also, neighboring sites are in need of more capacity to achieve better user experience. A new site is needed at this proposed location, height and ground elevation, and location to bridge this gap. I noticed at the April 25th hearing, there was a number of residents, and even some of the commissioners, that felt that Verizon's coverage was fine. I can tell you that Verizon is thrilled to hear that. But they would not be building this site if they didn't need it. They wouldn't be in business very long if they were spending thousands of dollars in sites that they didn't need. This site will cost them anywhere upwards of $300,000 to build. They're going to sign a 30-year lease with Crown Communications and pay thousands of dollars in rent. They wouldn't be doing it if they didn't need it. This is just a map to show you. You can see they're all on the existing sites that I showed you before and that I'll be going through here shortly. This shows that they do not have reliable in-building coverage, and this is going to get worse over time. They don't want to wait until you're having dropped calls. That's a problem. This is how it shows that it fills it in nicely and addresses the problem. Here is T-Mobile, similar statement, where they show that they're having coverage deficiencies in this area. And the maps show they're all surrounding the existing sites on the existing towers in the city limits. This shows their existing coverage and how it would fill in that gap. These are three nationwide carriers that have, Sprint has 50 million customers, T-Mobile I think has close to 70, and Verizon has 90 or 100 plus million subscribers. We're not talking about only about the residents that live here, but the people that come in and out of the city. So now we're to the monopine. The site plan has not changed. You have an existing 20 by 30 lease area. They're going to expand it by 17.5 by 30. That will give us enough space to hold all three base stations equipment and for the monopine. You have the picture of the monopole on the left. It's 102 foot tall. Excuse me. The tower itself is 102. If you add the lightning rod, it's 112. They're proposing to increase that to 110, and with their lightning rod, 115. You can see in the shadowed part, it's still the same tower with the same center lines, with Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile, with the municipal tenants on top, but we've added a new feature. It's a monopine. This is not something that they do often. In fact, it's the first time I've ever presented one. I always see these in very rare situations, but we do have one that has been built in Olympia Fields. I wanted to show this picture because the following pictures that we have are just simulations, and some people feel skeptical that I'm trying to slip something by them. But this is an actual monopine that was built in Olympia Fields. You can see the antennas on top. There's only one carrier here, and it's 105 feet tall. It's in a similar situation, so it worked out well as an example, because it's in a parking lot like we would be proposing here. So, photo simulations. I worked with Mr. Peterson. I asked him, where do you think I should take these different photos? And this is the advice he gave me, and I agreed. And we'll go clockwise, one down at the bottom and all the way around. Here's a picture on the left of the existing monopole. To the right is what the monopine would look like. Here is right in front of the fire station. This is the monopole on the left, monopine on the right. Now, the last time we were here, the residents to the north were the ones who were opposed to this, so I felt that these were the most important pictures. And also keep in mind, this is in the winter. There's no foliage on the trees. So 6 months out of the year, it's going to look like this. 6 months, you're going to even have a thicker coverage. This is on the left with and without. You could see it on the right-hand side. Here's a picture with the tower and without. I know Mr. Lehor is here tonight, and I believe his house is right on the right-hand side there. And here's a picture from the City Hall parking lot, which blends in quite well with the pine trees that are there. So, before I get to answer any questions, I feel it's important to point out a few sites that already exist in the city limits, and I think people forget, because they drive by them every day, that these exist. This one was brought up at the last hearing, I saw that. This is on the north side, Palatine Road and Elmhurst Road. It's a monopole with full antenna array, well within 200 feet of residential property line. Right down the street, you have another lattice tower with multi-carriers, full antenna arrays, well within 200 feet of residential property lines. Here's another tower that I actually zoned myself, probably over a decade ago. I don't know if you remember that, Dan, but it was, okay. This is in residential 2 zoning in a park, in Willow Trails Park. It's a short tower because of the airport, but it's a full antenna array, less than probably 270 feet. I kind of gauged it from Google Earth, from the actual residential dwellings, but it's in residential. Here's a monopole that you just go south of there. This is actually in neighboring Mount Prospect, but it's within 200 feet of the city residential lot lines. It's a full probably 120-foot tower with 2 full antenna arrays, well within 500 feet of residential property lines. Here's another tower that's on the northwest side. This one might be close to 500 feet. I couldn't get an exact number with Google Earth, but you get a clear shot from the residence. You can see it on the right of a full antenna array in a lattice tower with no shadowing whatsoever. And now you have our site. Our site, that again is in commercial. It's in residential zoning, but this is a mixed use. It's a fire station with an existing tower. You have a Walgreens with commercial. The people that bought next to this should know that what they bought next to. This was a tower that was 20 years ago. At any time, the fire department, wireless communications would need to come in and upgrade this site. Reasons to approve. Addresses the need for 3 wireless carriers to improve their service in the area, and modifying the existing tower that is already part of the visual landscape makes the most sense. Crown has also addressed the neighbors' concern with a creative monopine design. Allowing the monopine upgrades the site to meet 3 carrier design, which is required in your city code. What we're proposing tonight is in harmony with what your code tells us to do. The carriers have shown a need for the site. Crown has met the standards, and the city staff supports the application. An added benefit is that the Prospect Heights Fire Department District financially benefits with a 35% raise in their annual income. And it also improves their own Verizon mobile dispatch coverage. There is no doubt that they use Verizon service. And believe me, Verizon is thrilled. What we showed you tonight, and in a statement tonight, Verizon needs to address this. If they don't do this, where can they go? I know that there are some people here that feel that a tower like this shouldn't be in the heart of your downtown. What we're proposing is not unusual. I just showed you sites that are within your city limits. I haven't even gotten to neighboring sites. If you go to neighboring communities, you have the village of Glenview that has a tower, 100-plus foot tower with 2 antenna arrays right in the heart of the downtown, right on Waukegan Road, right next to residential. You have downtown Wilmette, 100, 120, 150-foot monopole with 3 antenna arrays right in downtown. I'm sure they didn't throw a party or threw fireworks when they built it, but they know they needed it. You need this. Where can we go if we can't go here? So I appreciate your time. I'm here to answer any questions that you have. We also have a radio frequency engineer here. Again, if it gets technical and you'd like to speak with them, that's why he came tonight. So thank you.
So Ray, let's see if there are questions from the commissioners. I guess my first question would be, it appears from the renderings that this proposed tower would be a 3-carrier tower.
Correct.
But in your in one of your application documents, you reference it being 4.
Correct.
So I guess I just wanted to clarify.
I'm glad you brought that up. I felt it was important to bring that up, that Crown is going to build a tower capacity-wise to handle additional carriers. But this application is for 3. It is for Sprint modifying their existing and going from a stealth to a full antenna array, adding Verizon, adding T-Mobile, and moving the municipal antennas to the top. But there's AT&T. I don't know what their needs are going to be. They're going to have to come in and do a separate application. They're going to have to do a separate ground lease with the fire station. I have no idea what will happen with them, but it's something that you should probably keep in mind.
Okay, so your application, though, is not
3.
seeking a variance for a
Correct.
4th
Just 3.
care. Okay, just want to confirm. And then I guess I'd want to, I'm looking at your rendering, this one here.
Yes.
And I guess my question for you would be, what would the dimension be from the ground to the bottom of the tree structure?
Well, I think that we can be flexible with that. You can see that,
Because I'm trying to compare it to the
Yeah.
one in Olympia
You can
Fields,
see the
and that
one
one
in Olympia
feels like
Fields.
it starts much higher.
correct, because they didn't need to have go down there. I think that Crown will be very flexible. They're not going to add, I would imagine those are radio frequency, right, they're RF transparent material. They're not cheap. So I don't think they're going to want to put up additional branches to contend with unless they have to. So they are
What I'm
probably,
saying- Go
yeah,
ahead.
they're probably only going to cover what needs to be covered, but they are open to suggestions. If you feel from aesthetic view, you'd like them to go down to a certain height, they're open to whatever you need. This was just an exact, we don't have exact CDs yet because we don't have approval, but we would be open to any suggestions that you have.
Because I've seen some, and even this one, to me, looks a little awkward, that the foliage is primarily on the
Right.
top, you know.
It doesn't
third.
represent your rendering.
Correct. And
Your
that's why-
rendering that you guys have, the foliage goes
Yeah, it feels like
well
it
below
goes-
what there is.
Right.
I think that was the idea. We're here, so if you like that down, I mean, that looked more like a monopine, then we're happy to do
So I've
that.
also seen some pictures, you know, online that are some pretty sad looking.
Yeah.
So if, you know, the monopine design, again, the more
We plan
full
on
it can
matching
look.
this, unless you specifically said, we'd like you to cut down your branches, have them higher, then we'd do that. But we plan to mirror a monopine tree as best we can.
Okay. And then I get,
Travis is with Crown Castle, he's the one who approves that, so if he wants to get up and answer that.
Name,
Yes.
full name for record,
please.
my name is Travis Schenk. I'm from Crown Castle. My address is 2000 Corporate Drive, Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania. So the reason for this, and then why you see so many differences in pine trees and why they start maybe higher or lower. Unfortunately, this photo is taken very close to the tower. What we tried to do is if you stand back away from the tower, you really want it to blend in with the tree line or the background. That's really what you're trying to do. If you stand up next to any tower, you're going to notice that it's a tower. So I did a lot of zoning approvals in the west where these trees, they're more standard, right? We've got the pine trees and elms and palm trees. We'd be happy to put a palm tree here if you want.
it's almost-
And maybe it'll be sunnier here, I don't know. So what we try to do is have it blend in with the background. So this tree that we're proposing here, the reason why that it starts a little lower is because when you stand back, you want it to blend in a little bit more. And you'd actually be able to see the trunk from a further distance. So that's why the branches go a little lower here, but maybe not in this case in Olympia Fields. If you stand back, maybe there's a building that would actually cover the trunk from a distance, so that's why they start a little higher. But as Ray was pointing out, he's right. We're here to hear from you. If the design, if you need it a little, the branches a little lower, we can do that. If you need us to move it up, we can do that as well, so.
And so maybe you know too, then, the material of the tree, the monopine, like, what is that made of? Does it require any future maintenance in regards to like replacement or repair or painting or peeling? You know, what kind of maintenance is involved with a monopine?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There is a lot more maintenance needed for a monopine. I'm not for sure exactly what the manufacturer would say in terms of how long the pine branches would last, but I believe it's something like 10 to 15 years. You'd start to see discoloration. We just completed, actually in city of Phoenix, and this is pine trees, but it's pretty much the same kind of material. I'm sorry, not pine trees, palm trees, where we had a project across the city to redo the palm branches all at once, and we just kind of did that in the city of Phoenix. But we typically try to look at that with help of code enforcement. We are inspecting these towers a minimum 2 times a year, sometimes more when we have carriers that come in and do equipment changes on the tower. We'll look at the branches to make sure that they're still functioning, that none have fallen off in a windstorm, so on and so forth. They're also tethered, by the way, so that's not something that typically happens. Yeah, I mean, there'll be about 10 years before all of the branches have to be replaced on these towers, so.
Who would be responsible for that?
Crown. Yeah.
What is, in this Midwest area, what's the oldest monopine you guys?
I don't know.
This is the only one I know that's in the Chicagoland area, and that's why I know it was probably built in the last 2 or 3 years.
So we don't,
And I specifically picked one so that if you wanted to go visit, you could.
so do you have any, so we don't have any substantial history on how they weathered
Not that
the
I know.
Chicagoland area?
Not that I
And
know.
in 5 years, it might need to be replaced as opposed to 10.
Well, I would imagine you could put it as a requirement that they have to
Condition of
maintain a
approval,
certain
yeah.
aesthetic view, and if not, then they'll replace it. I mean, that,
You had mentioned, one of the statements, you said, there's a lot, experienced a lot of drop calls. Is that from a specific carrier? Who had made that statement?
the statement was from Sprint,
From Sprint?
correct?
Okay. And can you pull up that curve, the map that has existing locations?
Which one? The Sprint?
The one that showed the existing poles where they're located, where the.
Oh, yes. The zoning map? Yeah. So the black circles, so I'm going to walk over here if you don't mind. This is our site here. I went clockwise, right around here, to show the existing sites that are surrounding here. So this is actually a water tank that's down there. But this is the existing tower I showed a picture of. There's a couple that are across the street. And then this site here is the first monopole I showed, and then this is the lattice tower that's right over here.
Is Sprint on all 5 of these poles?
You know, I'd have to look up the map. It looks like they are the one to the north, and they are the one to the east. And I don't see where they are to the south. But
How about to the west, where Rand Road is?
I don't see that site on there. They're usually showed by those triangles. So at Chayton, I don't know if you know that offhand where you are to the east, or, yeah, to the west, but can you come on up here?
And introduce yourself for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Chetan Chukka from Sprint, and my address is 842 Jamieson Court.
Can you go up and point on the map where your adjacent sites are?
So,
You can walk up there.
Yes.
So there's one site right over here, and then one to the north, and then this is our main site we're talking about. We have one to the south right here, but the next site from here is like 0.75
Can you
miles.
show where you are to the west? Do you happen to know where you are to the west? That's east.
Oh, sorry. The west, actually, we are past the Rand Road, right over on the north over here. I would say it is 1.7 miles from this location.
So I think one of the comments from Sprint, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've had a lot of drop calls through Rand Road. Rand Road is one of the roads listed on, as the road. If Sprint doesn't have one on that tower there, why not look at going there before you guys go here, as for Sprint?
Well, they might be looking at a site up there, but what they stated in their statement is that this network, this site right here is needed. They're already here. What they need to do is add 2.5 and 800 megahertz in order for the site to function properly. And because they're concealed in that, they can't do it. But they very well could be looking at something to the west as well. They're constantly looking at, but they're telling us right now, to have an impact on their network, they need a full site here, just like they have in all their adjacent sites. So they need that and likely something to the west.
Now, you had mentioned one at Willow Trails as well?
Woodland, the golf course, the driving range, yeah.
Is that the driving range, Willow Trails?
No, that's.
Oh, Woodland Trails, that's
off of
just
Apple
T-Mobile.
Drive.
That's the one that's by the airport, correct?
Yes, that is right here.
What's the height of that one?
I'm guessing 50, 60 feet. They went so low because of the airport.
And I guess this might be a question for him as an engineer. What's the difference in a 50-foot height pole and a 110-foot you're proposing in terms of coverage for us? Can you guys provide
I think I
that?
can answer that.
Okay.
You tell me if you want to elaborate on it. It's all line of sight, right? The taller you are, the more you cover. So if you're trying to cover a specific intersection that might be getting pounded with coverage, you want to be able to control that signal. These panel antennas that they use are directional antennas. They put them down and they cover a certain area. The higher you go, the more you cover. So when you're in downtown Chicago, they want to be 40, 50 feet. They want to control it. When you're in a rural area in Head, they want to be 250, 300. They want to cover big areas on an expressway. So I can tell you that T-Mobile would really like to be taller. They weren't happy about taking that, but that's all they could get because of the FAA restriction.
And I understand that, but my question was, you have coverage maps showing what a 110-foot pole do. You've shown us before and afters, right?
Yeah.
Is there a possible way to get a before and after if we had a 50-foot pole?
Yeah.
Well, see, you have a problem is you have a standard 10-foot separation. So if you even moved it down to 50 feet, right, you have to factor in 3 other carriers. You have to factor in fire department, right? They need to be at a certain height. Right now, they're at the top. They're at 100 feet. You've got Verizon at 93. You've got Sprint below that at 85. And then you've got T-Mobile below that. They can't all operate on the same center line. So if you're going to go to 50, right, and you're going to put Sprint at 50, well, where are Verizon and the fire department? Verizon's going to have to go 10 feet up. Fire departments have to go 10 feet up. It's a standard 10-foot separation.
Which I understand.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
Do we have the data to show what that would do? You're saying- Right now, you're asking for,
Yeah.
and here's I live in that area as well. And again, great presentation of the tree and stuff, but me going into our downtown, seeing something 110 feet, when I even looked into something that could have been maybe 60 feet, 70 feet, without having the coverage maps to know what that would do, it's an uninformed decision on my end, you know what
Well,
I'm saying?
all I can tell you is those maps that were provided were based on the heights that we gave them. So Verizon gave you a map at 93 feet. If you're going to bump them down to 60, I got to ask them, does it still work?
Right.
Sprint right now is at 70 feet. So if you're asking them to go down to 40 feet, I don't know if, can you offhand, if you took a drop in 30 feet, would that still work?
I was about to talk about the specific band. So Sprint, as you guys know, has 3 different bands, and the new technology we are adding is in the higher band. So the physics calls like the more frequency you go, the lesser you cover. So if you drop 30 feet, you're going to lose like around 0.3 miles of coverage. So it's going to shrink your coverage.
Okay.
So if the,
So I guess I have a question. So the fire department antennas are proposed to be at the top?
Correct.
And is there a certain height requirement that the fire department needs from a pole?
Well, they've always maintained that certain height. We're moving them up for a specific reason, because you can see in the site plan, I want to show you something. Let me get to that site plan. Whoops. So they have stick or whip or Yagi antennas, right? So these antennas stick up here, right? This is a 10-foot antenna, and they had a side mount 10-foot antenna. You can't put antennas at the same height, right? You have to have separation. You can see they all have separation. So we put them on top so that we could go below it. If we put them in the middle, they take up too much space. They take up 20 feet. So I know that their antennas are they've been operating at this height. If I turn around and we ask them to take a 20, 30-foot drop, the only way to get an answer is they have a consultant that they would have to go to them and say, hey, look, can our antennas still operate at this height? I don't know. But I don't think they would be happy to take that drop in height. I know that the carriers all provided coverage maps based on these heights. If you shrink them down here and they're operating down here, I would think that'd have a significant impact on their coverage. Yes, it is.
You also mentioned, though, that the design that you're proposing is for additional carriers, more than 3, for in the future.
I stated that with Commissioner Chairman Dash already,
So,
that I stated that this application is for 3 carriers.
right. So if the design was for only 3 carriers, then how would that impact the height or the design?
Well, so let's just say Dish Network. They're a network that's going to be coming to build out. Or AT&T. They come in here and they say, well, we need something in this area. And we built this, right? The only option they would have is to go here. They can't go anywhere else. And they still would have to come for a special use from you.
Would it work? Would Dish Network work then?
That is all up to the RF engineers that are designing the network.
So I think what her question is, if that's designed for 4 right now, so it's designed taller than it needs to be for 3. Because if that's the height for 4, wouldn't it be shorter if it's designed for 3?
No. This is designed for 3 carriers plus the fire department.
Understood.
I'm telling you that it's going to be structurally sound enough with a foundation to add 4. But I have no idea if that 4th carrier, they're not here tonight. I have no idea if this is going to work for them or not. But at least it'll be structurally sound. What's terrible is when you come in and the site wasn't built and the foundation isn't sound enough, and you can't even entertain the idea.
But if we're willing to not entertain a 4th carrier, does it decrease the height of the pole? I think that's
No.
what we're trying to figure out.
It does not.
And we're trying to understand too.
Yes,
if
what is
we-
the minimum height of an antenna to function somewhat properly?
I would have to go back. You have an existing 102-foot tower. We're not asking for a huge increase. I would have to go back and ask 4 wireless carriers. So 3 wireless carriers and the fire department to give an analysis on lowering it. How much feet do you want it lowered by? 20 feet, 30 feet?
Is this all different technology? All these antennas are different technology?
I'd have to ask the Army Corps of Engineers to propagate and say, is it worth building at this height? I mean, if it gets to a certain, if it's not covering enough, it's not worth building.
Understood. but
Yeah.
We don't.
But
the
what
data
is,
we
I
have
guess,
are-
what is the height that you would be willing to consider?
Well, we'd like to know probably some increments. Start with 50, start with 70, start with 90. Give us some increments, give us some data on, okay, if we go to 90, if we go to 70, what does it do with the coverage? Then we can ask the engineer here, okay, well, how is this coverage suitable for us? I have Verizon. I'm one of the guys in the last meeting said, I have Verizon. I have great service at home. In reality, if we are in a residential area, everyone has Wi-Fi in their houses. So it's not as important to have great cell coverage in your house because I have 4 kids. They all rely on Wi-Fi. And they all have Verizon. So if my Wi-Fi goes down, fine, I'll deal with Verizon. Then I have to deal with Verizon. But that doesn't happen enough. So for us to consider the residents' cellular needs, if we didn't have Wi-Fi in the house, then it'd be more of a cellular need. Now we're talking about cars that drive by and have drop calls and so forth, and I understand that. When we're talking about what the fire department needs, they're not watching YouTube and doing all this on their phone. So for me, their need for high-speed data, unless I'm correct, is phone calls and communication that way.
I
That,
believe they use Verizon as their two-way dispatch too. I mean,
But
everything
regardless
is,
of what I'm
and their
saying is-
laptops and everything is with Verizon.
right, so they don't have, and Tim Jones could probably, they don't have this great high bandwidth requirement that's a need for, to get this, what we have right now satisfies them. My opinion, I might be wrong in that. So when you're suggesting going higher and making it bigger, to me, the bigger concern is making it bigger. I've lived here for 5 years in Prospect Heights, lived in this area for my whole life. I've never noticed that pole that's there right now in Waupun.
Chairman Patel, have you noticed all the other towers in the community?
I have.
Okay.
The one by Dave's Auto, I'd see it, I've noticed it before even this, every application ever came up. Every one of those pictures you sent, besides the one by Milwaukee, I know where they are, not because I can recognize them, I've seen them, I've noticed them. The one, I live closer to Palatine Road, real close to Dave's Auto. And the one at Dave's Auto and the one that's on Palatine Road, just north of south of Palatine, I know that one too. I've seen those, I was driving today, I noticed another one. The ones that have the big arrays, you notice really well. The one at Walgreens, I know blends pretty decently. Now, I've noticed a little more after it's been pointed out, but I actually have to look for that one. The other ones catch my eye, and my concern is having, and I appreciate the tree, idea of the tree, that's just me. But having a tree that's taller than anything in the area, and now we've made this little this pole we have 10 times wider, it's a great idea, but what if we get up and we don't like how it looks? Now where are we at? As a city, that's concerning to me, because that's our downtown, you know what I'm saying? Prospect Heights is like, to me, our Mayberry area, we're a small town or a big town, you know what I'm saying? Everyone knows each other in this town, and it's just, it seems that we're putting technology in ahead of our residents potentially for doing this, especially, and we haven't had residents talk yet, but I know I have a gist of what they're gonna say.
Well, I hate to cut you off, but I was hoping what I explained tonight was that there's a need and there's an obligation to work with these carriers. Shaden, maybe you can get up and explain a little more of why this is so important to your network. I appreciate if you came up to the microphone, though. Yeah. But,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Is this as a result of the Chase building on the corner of Euclid and 83 being demolished? And there was an array of antennas on that as far as, and now all of a sudden we have a hole?
I don't think so. No one's told me that. So the RF maps and the statements speak for themselves, but no one came out and said, hey, this is a direct result of that site being decommissioned. So no. So Jaden, maybe you could elaborate on why is it so important to have.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. So basically, he made all the good points. I would like to add that we're talking about 5G right now. All carriers are progressing towards something called 5G technology. And I understand that Wi-Fi really does the job, but when we're talking about 5G speeds, they're 3 times as what the Wi-Fi is delivering as of today. And the second point I would like to make is the 911 calling. That is still a requirement. So we need in-building coverage to do that. And at our current rate, we do not have sufficient capacity to provide all the subscribers calling. So what we decided is to upgrade to new technologies. And for 5G upgrade, we need the 2.5. That's the bandwidth. And that requires an additional antenna. That's why we went to the zoning for additional arrays. Also, we receive like a number of drop calls requests daily from these areas, and customers are always complaining, hey, there is call, I was talking, and I just dropped. So every call we get, we document those, and based on the level of the severity, we try to upgrade. And this was one of the top 10 in the last year. So now we're getting all the funds placed, and this was a long-term project, but we finally got it approved from Sprint side based on funding, and that's the state.
So let me ask you one question before you go. Their question of knowing what is the limit, how low can you go? I know you can't speak for the RF engineers, but is it fair to say you can't give an analysis until you plug it into your software?
Yeah, I cannot really give an accurate value, but my estimation is right now we are at 85. We cannot survive if we go below 80. The only difference would be 5 feet, especially because the current radio we have is on the ground. So that's something called a ground mount radio, so we are losing coverage already.
So, if you're asking them to go lower, this is Sprint. It's telling you they don't want to go 5 feet lower. You have Verizon above that. You have the village fire department antennas even above that. So you're asking them all to squish lower or go below Sprint. I think it's going to have a significant impact, and I don't think it'll work.
I don't think we're asking anything. I think we're trying to educate ourselves in regards to, is 110 feet, then 115 feet with the lightning rod, like, is that the best we can do?
I think
So-
when you look at how they're all kind of smushed together and they have that minimum separation requirement, you're at the limits.
So, yeah, so again, just wondering,
Yeah.
like, is that the best we can do? Is it
I
5
believe,
feet?
I am confident to say this is the best they can do. You go
Okay.
back, if I ask them to drop this 30 feet, I think they're going to come back and say it doesn't work.
Okay, so that's a fair response.
I'd like to hear what his response to that is, because he's an engineer. So,
Well, he just said 5 feet.
no, he's saying, okay, so do you have any towers that are lower? Let's start with that.
In this area or elsewhere?
Anywhere you've dealt with personally?
Oh, so I deal with all the Chicago market, but if there are any sites which are lower than 50, we have two sites very close to each other.
Okay, so you
So
do have,
within the 0.5 miles, yeah.
okay, so you do have sites 50 and lower?
Yeah, we do, but only on a few cases where we have another additional site or a rooftop close by.
Okay,
And,
so that's option, that's one.
yeah.
How hard would it be to look at this pole going from 50 feet, or then 70 feet, and then 90 feet? Besides, and I understand you got to do analysis again from every carrier, right?
Right, yeah, and,
A Sprint, you can do your own Sprint carrier, you're from Sprint, if I
Right.
remember correctly, right? So you guys can do analysis on that, right?
yeah, we could do it, but then we have to do it on all the three bands. So currently, we only have mid-band or 1900. So we still don't have the other two bands, which are more critical and which are more important. So once we have them, then we can do an estimation values. But like I predict, we're going to lose a lot of outside cellular coverage in the zone.
Interesting. But my thoughts are, you guys are asking us to make a decision on a 110-foot mono tree, when we don't have enough data to say the 90's not going to work, or the 80's not going to work, the 70's not going to work. That's,
You have a 102-foot monopole as it stands. I mean, it stands there, right there today.
I understand
We're
that.
talking about an 8-foot difference. And it's pretty hard to
remember,
decipher 110 versus 102 when you're looking at the ground.
You're also talking about blending in with the environment or
Correct.
in the area. Right now, what you're looking at on the left is very different than what's on the right. It's got much more of a presence.
That's
When
what,
you're-
yeah.
When you're putting the antennas on the outside, and then when you're doing the pine, that pine is going to be, it's going to be twice the height of any pine in the area. So it's definitely going to stand out. So I think your comment about wanting to blend in with the environment is the same thing that we're trying to do.
Right.
Right now, I think it does not blend in with the environment.
I wish I could make it look invisible, but there's still a need, and we haven't found any other site that makes sense. And there's a dire need with 3 carriers. That's still the bottom line that we have here.
So I think the height is a good question. If, can we make it less tall so that it isn't quite as prominent as it is right now?
Commissioner Dash, can I ask Deputy Chief Jones for his opinion as far as for drop calls? And if I recall, last time, he was saying that he feels that he's in a hole, that he doesn't, a lot of times you can't even communicate with your equipment?
No, I said last time was that we use these little Verizon hotspots to communicate.
Tim, you got to come up.
Yeah,
here.
you got to come up, Tim. You know the rules better than most.
We use Verizon hotspots to communicate with dispatch. They sit on the dash of the rigs. We're in a bunker. We're a concrete and steel building. I think something has changed when they pull down that Chase Bank, or I don't know where our closest Verizon spot is. Because we use Verizon, we don't use Sprint. We got off Sprint a long time ago. So as far as communicating, we're there, it works. Is it fast? Is it reliable? We have a lot of external antennas glued to the vehicle windshields for these hotspots, which most people don't have. They're external antennas. But when you talk about reducing the height of our antennas for our communication, we got to really think about that. I got to do a lot of thinking and planning. We put up that 100-foot tower after one of our firefighters flipped the vehicle at the corner of 83 and Palatine. He picked up his portable radio and called for help. At that time, back in the 80s, and believe it or not, we were all here in the 80s, he was trying to talk to the Hilton at, Milwaukee and what was it, River? Sanders, whatever over there. Nobody could help him. That's when we put up that 100-foot tower. We're a receiver site on a huge network of receivers. Our dispatch center has what's called a voter, and it's always like voting for a signal to whoever has the best signal. So if our guys key up a portable radio, let's say they're in the basement of Neil's house and they need help, and they pick up that 5-watt portable radio, they got to be able to hit the top of that tower to get to dispatch.
Well, see, and that's why I'm curious to know, the height may be a non-issue if the fire department is currently operating at the 102 feet.
Yeah, and I can't opine,
But-
I don't have any
right, so-
technical data to tell you, we got to be at 102. What happened was, back in the 80s, we got to use tower. It was blue, I don't know if everybody remembers it. 102 feet, we got it for free. We put it up. We're at 102 feet, we're good to go. If we're going to drop to 80, I have no data that says that'll work or won't work.
You have the ability to get that data?
Well, it's going to take a lot of work. But yeah, I mean, anything's possible.
Okay, so I would say that pole height is a general concern at this point.
For us.
So, right.
Just
So-
for fire department communications.
Correct, and
Right.
maybe some people on the board, so, well noted, right? So maybe we could, because I want to get through some, if we have other technical questions in regards to the application, because I certainly want to hear from everyone who came to speak tonight as well, and we can certainly stay as long as we need to, but let's just note that height is a concern.
Yep.
And if there's, we can continue on that topic, but any other items from the commissioners in regards to questions for our applicant before we do open it up to the public for comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Actually, I presented once in the city of Albuquerque, and they wanted no towers higher than 30 feet in their city. It was, and we tried to explain to them. So we were trying to, they didn't understand, and I think that's actually helped my understanding of the science. This is a science. This is not theory, and we have engineers that will tell you that it's a science, right? So, but I want to, maybe this will help explain the height issue. So think of, and Ray, you kind of touched on it, but we have to go high in order to provide coverage. That's only one part of the issue with the network. When you shorten the tower and shrink the height, the coverage is lessened. So then we have to transmit to another tower. So if you're in your house, you may not have an issue because you're stationary and you're linked to one tower. As you're moving along, your cell phone travels to another tower, and it's, the whole network is linked, which is why you have dropped calls. And, back in the 90s, I actually had a cell phone in the 90s. I'll tell you a little bit about my age. I know I've got some friends here that weren't around. But we constantly were dropping calls, and it was just a call. Now you have data. So this is the other part of the reason for height and number of towers. So you shrink the height, now you've got to put more towers in your community. So consider that. You don't want that either. So you need some height, and that takes care of the coverage part. Now we have capacity, and that is where we're going. That's what Sprint is really trying to tell you, that the other bands provide capacity. So when you have data, that takes way more capacity than a call, right? So we're traveling along using Waze or Google Maps. We have cars, we have trucks that are communicating with one another. That is all capacity because of the data demand. So now you need a stronger, more robust network, and you've got that with your height, and then you've got that with some shorter towers. And I think that's kind of where you're going. We do see some other shorter towers in the area, but now we have to put them closer together to provide the capacity and the coverage. The capacity in this room is really astounding. If you measure everybody's data usage in this room, it's crazy. And it's only increasing exponentially on a daily basis, the amount of data that we need to communicate with one another. So I don't know if that helps to kind of educate or talk about. And you said it yourself, you maybe didn't understand as much as you needed to. Hopefully that helps a little bit, in layman's terms. And I have plenty of slides that I could show you in terms of towers at height, and you shrink those and what that does to the network in terms of needing more towers. Again, I don't think you want more towers in your neighborhoods.
Thank you. Okay. So again, any questions for the applicant before we open for public?
I wanted to ask Director Peterson again to clarify what specifically the variation is that we're looking at tonight. It's only the height, or?
The current approvals that Crown Castle has for their tower on the fire department property is they have 110 feet. That includes the height of the lightning rod on the existing tower. That was what was granted in 1998. So they've already got that aspect. The application is asking for an additional 5 feet plus a little over in height on that, so that's the variation. The other one is that the original tower only had the Sprint carrier, the Sprint as the telecommunication in the fire department. Our ordinance requires any changes to the pole requires an amendment to the special use, which is the additional carriers, and that's what is here before us. They also had approval to have the tower, which they still retain in the R1 district within 500 feet. So at the end of the day, the question is the height of the 5 feet in height, because they've got.
Is it 5 feet or 3 feet?
They're going up to 115. I think there may have been a change to the lightning rod, but the original ordinance as written was 110 feet.
Okay, because this.
The actual tower height with the lightning rod is 112 as it stands right now. And we're actually going 115. So it's really a difference of 3 feet when you add the municipal antennas, the fire department antennas. So we're talking really a fine line here. So if you're saying if we swap like for like, could the carriers drop 5 feet? The answer is yes. But knowing what they were trying to accomplish, I think it's pretty clear, and I can't imagine 5 feet would have that big of an impact on your decision tonight.
Director Peterson, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What liability do we have as a city from the FCC that would require us to have this pole? I mean, if we decide, hey, we don't want this pole, we all vote no, can the FCC come back at us and say, hey, there's a legal problem here?
I'm not in a position to answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know the answer. I could pose that to the city attorney to do some research on that question. But at this point in time, I don't have an answer.
Okay. Director Peterson, one question from me here. If Crown wanted to add antennas for 2 other carriers, could they do that right now?
No. The city code says it shall be designed for 3 carriers. It doesn't say 4, so.
No, the question is, could the existing pole handle 2 other antennas?
I do not have that information because I don't know the structural integrity of that pole
I think
and
he's
the
asking,
equipment.
can they just go ahead and add 2 without asking?
I don't, they would have to provide structural engineering data, they would have to say that. I don't know if that stealth pole was designed to carry full rack antenna.
You have two center lines, two canisters to hold antennas. One of those canisters is where the fire department has their antenna. So right now, Sprint is only using one canister.
I think, you might answer the question, but that answers the question for me. If that pole can structurally handle more arrays, can they go and do it without coming to us for approval? Is that your question?
I believe that.
Yeah, that's,
I believe that it's designed for stealth, so we couldn't just go add a wireless antenna. Is that what you mean?
Regardless of that, the question I
Right,
think
do
we're
they have the
asking,
rights to 2 more arrays
do they have the rights to 2 more arrays at this time?
without, if the pole didn't need any more modifications? Or
They
would
would
have
still have to
plans?
come forward with the special use, but the variance question is off the table.
Okay, special use would still need to be part of it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Because their original special use was for the one
One
cell, one carrier and a stealth tower.
Right.
Okay. So again, per Janet's clarification then, so what they're seeking tonight is the special use, which they would need if any changes are made to the existing pole. And then the second one is the height, which is basically 3 feet. That's the
Yes.
application before us, okay. Okay, so any other questions that we feel that the applicant, that Ray could answer for us, or Travis? Okay, then I'd like to open it up then to public testimony. Do we have a sign-in sheet tonight?
No, but I was going to just start one.
Okay, because I don't know if we had a specific order then. Okay, so we don't, we can go in any order that the,
What I'm going to ask that you do is, when you come up to testify, please state your name, your address, and if you'd like a contact back from city or something, a contact phone number. And then- Oops, sorry, Patrick. There you go, thank you.
okay. Certainly, go ahead, certainly. And this is just a copy of the presentation you're giving this evening?
Yes.
Do we, if it's a copy, we enter this into the public record?
Yes, this would be, what we're going to do is, the pictures of the monopine were Exhibit 7, the presentation by Crown Cath, or from Insight, the PowerPoint will be Exhibit 8, and then this presentation will be entered in as Exhibit 9. Okay.
Sorry.
PowerPoint mode down here. I got that. Yeah. It should come up. Thank you, council. My name is Scott Lehor, and this is my wife, Amy. We live at 9 East Clarendon in Prospect Heights. As you can see from the picture, we are directly behind the proposed structure. We've been in the community for over 15 years, extremely active with sports and school. We have 3 daughters that we've raised, 18, 15, and 9. So we have been directly behind the fire department for 15 years. It's been great neighbors to us. We did know when we were getting in that we were moving in behind a fire station, a police station, Walgreens, and things of that nature, but coming from the city, it wasn't such a stretch for us. So we did do some significant landscaping costs. We removed all of kind of the older trees and put up newer trees. That was about 10 years ago, and they're starting to take off. So we take a lot of pride in our backyard for that. I'd also like to show my proposal appreciation. Tim Jones
He had
but
to
I
leave for an
stepped out.
emergency.
What's that?
He had to
No,
leave for an emergency.
I was going to give him a compliment because he's been very transparent through this whole process with me. I know Tim fairly friendly, so we run into each other around town, but he has provided information and heads up around these things, which I really appreciate. And he's stated on several occasions that it's his intention to be good neighbors first and foremost, so I want to say I appreciate that. Also, the board for being objective and previously the proposed dismissal by taking consideration the Prospect Heights residents and our concerns that we had back in the previous submittal. And also Insight Corp. Mr. Schenkel's been very transparent as well, provided me with their plans, willing to have meetings and discuss the proposed structure. So I wanted to say that I appreciate you guys as well. And something that you didn't have to do and you wanted to do what was right, and I appreciate it. So I just wanted to kind of start off, because there's been a lot of like pictures here and there, to really kind of go back to what we started out with the last proposal. And I think everybody's eyes were opened when people have not recognized that literally 500 feet away or 500 yards away, there's a tower that nobody notices, and we all pass this probably hundreds of times a month. But people that go by Dave's Auto Body, even though that's more in an industrial setting, you basically see that structure, but we don't live 50 feet behind it. We just drive by it, you know. I know Commissioner Patel's got an office setting there, but it's not directly looking out his window. So on the left is Dave's Auto. On the right is another Castle property that's in Arlington Heights that I just happened to be driving by. It's set back behind a strip mall, so it's in more of an industrial setting. And from and I'm a layman as far as the blueprints, but it looks like there was 3 arrays that were proposed with the potential of 4 arrays, and that looks to be pretty similar to what I think it would look like inside the quote micro pine design. And again, most of this is cosmetics. To the left is the Walgreens, the concealed antenna. That's what we called the last time around. It was a concealed antenna. I know that's a little bit outdated. It does give the fire department the ability to have their antennas on top. But the one on the right is more of the 5G, the carriers, the platforms, and things like that. And I try to do as realistic job as I can with the car. You can kind of see how that is. And I would guess, and they might be able to comment on it, but I would guess that's probably in the 120-foot range based on, I've been looking at a lot of towers lately. So this is in our main intersection of Camp McDonald and 83. And I think Commissioner Stewart basically debated, you know, that's almost 3 times larger than any natural tree that we have. So I think it's very much larger than any native tree we have in the area. At 115 feet, although the tower is 102 or whatever we stated, and it seems like minimal feet, if you look at the width, you're looking at, Commissioner Patel said, you know, it's going to be 10 times wider, and we still don't know exactly what that's going to look like until it goes up, because there's not a lot to look from. Olympia Field from here is a little bit of a height. And that looked like it was more in an industrial, not in a residential area from the pictures that we were provided. So roughly, it's about the size of a 10-story building that can be viewed from blocks away. It's 3 times larger than the ones at Dave's by Auto Body, and we have some potential safety concerns that my wife's going to address because we literally live, and I walked it off the other day, 50 feet from this tower. Okay. So 50 feet from where our kids are on their trampoline and you know, their play set and everything, and there are some concerns safety, whether they're legitimate or not, but they are concerns. And we still don't know what the multi-race is going to look like. That looks like a nice picture. And again, these are pictures that I took from their plans, which they graciously provided me, but they're not as clear as Mr. Schenkel's plans. But I think that this is more of a Prospect Heights issue, not just a Clarendon or the neighborhood surrounding. I think that this is going to, once up, that's going to tower the corner of Camp McDonald 83, people are going to go, what is that thing? Oh, you live by that big tree. And I think it could be an embarrassment for all Prospect Heights residents. I've done some things talking to some friends. There were several friends that also wanted to be here this evening, but weren't able to, and a few people had to leave because of the time. But I think that that this needs to be more of a Prospect Heights issue than just a Scott Lehor, Amy Lehor, Clarendon issue. This is really the representation of our city. Some of the pictures that you show, and I tried again to stay as true as I could from the plans that I was provided, that's a huge difference, okay? You can see that's a decent-sized truck that's probably, what, maybe 6 or 7 times bigger than a truck and probably twice as wide. That's gonna stand out in our downtown, and that's not even a great picture to boot. This is the picture that Mr. Shico shared as well. You can see the tree right behind the fire station. The one on the left is hardly noticeable. The one on the right, going from where the Polish deli for you is, looking across there, it's right there. This one looked a little bit different from Mr. Schinkel's because I actually saw the tree in his, and it was kind of like a Where's Waldo in this one.
No, it's a mistake.
Okay, so yeah, so I was looking and it looked like either they were, it was either right behind. Okay, yeah, and again, I just didn't know if it was obscured by trees and taken behind the trees, or if it was not photoshopped, but we both are on the same page. Thanks for honesty there. But you can see that place set right there is probably within 100 feet. There's a neighbor then on the other side that the tower would probably be about 75 feet. And then my property is right there, which is about 50 feet from the antenna. And then the neighbor next to him is probably, again, another 75 feet. So we have 3 residents, which we utilize our backyards because they're 300 by 100, or is that right? And so we utilize the back of our yard quite a bit. So, and I don't have much more, so I know it's been a long evening for everybody. This is actually, I just wanted to point out that the left is unnoticeable, probably because of the day, right? It's white, and it's a white background. But if you look at the right, it's definitely noticeable, and this is from Clarendon Street. But the key here is it looks like it's kind of blending in with those trees. This is from 400 yards away from our street. So when you're going down our street from the Della Rivas, our neighbors here, that's right out their front window. They're going to be able to see that from 400 to 450 yards away. And I think it's going to be extremely intrusive.
Just for clarification, 400 feet or 400 yards?
400 yards, sorry.
Quarter mile, 1,200 feet?
No, about 400 yards. 400 yards, 4 football.
Yeah, about quarter mile.
400 feet, right?
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Right? Yeah, 400.
We've been talking in feet.
400 feet, yeah, because it's 300 feet wide.
Right.
And then it's probably another 100 foot from there. So, yeah, sorry, 400
No,
feet.
thank you.
No, that was my bad. And this is the one that obviously looks like, hey, why not? But you look at the tower that's in the left, that's, again, that is probably 300 yards or so behind. And those trees in the front are probably 45 feet high. Those are some large pines that are literally right across the street. That sign, I'm guessing, is about 15 to 20 feet high. So when you look at it, yeah, I mean, it looks great. But what you don't understand is that tree is so far back there that it's really not mine. So I thought it was a little bit deceptive, and maybe not by design, but I did want to point out that it's not in line with those two. And those are 2 of the larger trees in our area. My buddy's the forester in Arlington Heights, and he said a large tree in this area is around 50 feet by 15 to 20 wide. This is going to be considerably higher and considerably not natural. This is the tree that was pointed out. All of those towers are going to fit into the right micro tree, and Mr. Schinko did point out that there was only a single array in there in his presentation, so that's kind of redundant. And then these are some signs that I took off the Arlington Heights tower that I showed, and my wife Amy's going to talk a little bit about some of our safety concerns.
Well, did you want to talk about the signs at the very bottom? If you zoom in on it, it says something about the fact that it could be dangerous to humans' exposure if you're within so many feet of this structure. We found this website, and in it talks about the harmful emissions of radio frequency that can be sent out from these cell towers. because of the high wattage. And then the World Health Organization said that radio frequency radiation is a possible carcinogen. So we are concerned being so close to that, because the third bullet point talks about the closer you are to these cell towers, the more harmful it is to you, and it can mess with your own body's electromagnetic fields and give you potential, short-term issues like headaches, memory loss, cardiovascular stress. You're looking to have children, low sperm count, birth defects, and other types of cancer. So we are concerned with that. Video play.
No, I don't think we'll get into the video.
Okay.
There's a 5 or 6 minute video. It's basically somebody that has a tower that's about 50 feet from there, and he's got an RF device, and he's able to get the radiation count of what that is. I do suggest that the board take a look at that when they have an opportunity to do so, because it was really eye-opening, because it literally was basic, and that was just one array. So you have the website. Patrick wasn't sure whether he'd be able to play it or not, but based on time, I think we'll continue to move on. But it's there. And again, both of these studies are from 2019, and they're from a decent source, I guess. So this gets into kind of the consideration, the clarification. I don't personally believe that the standard special uses are met. I was surprised at the beginning when, the special use permit was for the use of multiple carriers. I understand that. And then the variation in height, which seems reasonable based on the fact that it's not going to be much taller than the tower. I think the big concern is the cosmetic and the reputation that that's going to present in our town by having something wide when you're going from, and I don't know what the current one is, 4 feet at the top versus 40 to 50 feet at the top. It's going to be very imposing, I think, on our downtown. And I'd be interested in what Walgreens thinks about that with their brand and their image, because it literally looks like it towers over Walgreens, and I don't think that they're aware of this. And then the thing that I was confused on that I might be able to clarify it is the distance. I understand that there was one up, the original one was put up in 1998, but why wouldn't this structure be considered new based on the fact that they're not utilizing any of the other special use for that antenna? That antenna is no good. Why aren't we starting fresh? Because they're basically putting a brand new antenna there. I think that that's the biggest thing, because now we're going back to, I don't know, I wasn't here in 1998, but we're 50 feet from our property line. How that was approved, I have no idea. I wasn't here, but it was, and now we're stuck with it, but it was grandfathered in as far as I'm concerned. But I think that there should be some due diligence in regards to maybe that was the right way to go. Maybe, they weren't using 5G, there wasn't RF frequencies or things like that, and there wasn't these arrays or whatever, so it made sense. Maybe the fire department needed it more from a safety concern, and that was what made sense. But I think that consideration should be treating this as a net new project, not just because there's a tower there, let's take it down and put a brand new tower there without meeting the other obligations. So if you look at the variations, it says in the city code is 80 feet, this is 115, that's a 35-foot variation. No communication antennas or towers shall locate within 500 feet. The variation is 450 feet. That's staggering. 450 feet. And it just so happens that there's several neighbors that are within that, and I'm closer to that, but I'm wondering why we're even still having this discussion when, we're talking 50 feet when the code is 500 feet. And no towers should be 3-carrier capable. I think that was addressed, that's what they're going now, with potentially building out a platform for something down the road. And then they would have to come, and it sounds like it would be the carrier that would have to come to actually get special approval if they wanted to add to that. So that's kind of a moot point. They addressed that. And again, going back to the proposed structure, it's 7 to 10 feet wider. It's dense. It has multiple arrays, unnatural aesthetics. This proposal, this proposal should be considered completely new. As I said, construction is not part of a grandfathered existing antenna. It's a brand new antenna. They're not utilizing it. And it sounds like they're not able to put a couple more arrays on there because structurally it might not fit. I think that really, for the residents, needs to be looked at. and there's no hardship. I don't know, I know that there's some revenue in play. It's always a big thing, and I get it, but what's the hardship? What's the variance? What really constitutes this going up, potentially affecting our city, the progress that we're trying to do, as Commissioner Patel called Mayberry? Do we want to be known for having the Franken tree, micro tree in our neighborhood, you know, or in the center of our neighborhood? And then inside, I think, should be tasked with more of a suitable location. You know, there's other locations, I saw the diagrams and things like that, but, you know, there's another fire station that's right down the street. Do some testing. There's no residential area over there, you know. I don't know. It just seems like it shouldn't be 20 or 50 feet behind people's backyards, and it shouldn't be the crown in the middle of our small city, in my opinion. I think that's about it. Oh, actually, I have some more additional reasons. I think the entire Prospect Heights community and surrounding businesses should be informed prior to any approvals, not just the surrounding neighborhoods. I think if this was to get approved and it was to go up, I think that the masses would come out and go, what the heck is going on here with our city? Potential short and long-term safety impacts that my wife had mentioned. I think that we'd like to have more confirmation that we have nothing to worry about there, and I don't think the onus is on us to try to figure that out. I don't think the industrial tower will represent our city in a positive way, detracts from our downtown setting and planned visual progress, and a Prospect Heights resident should be advised of the benefits to the residents. I use, 5G is great. I don't have a 5G phone. If I'm in the city and I need to download a movie in 30 seconds, that's great. 95% of the time, I'm on Wi-Fi at home. My cell phone kicks over to Wi-Fi. It doesn't have any effect on me, okay? It could be for other carriers that have issues, but I would suggest that there's opportunities to have a wireless infrastructure within your home. I brought this up with Deputy Jones the last time, that I would be happy to help him design it, because I'm in technology, to basically make sure that he has coverage down there, and it's as simple as having your Comcast modem, wireless or access point down there via modem, and then it'll kick over. So I think there's other ways around it. And then last but not least, I think the proposed cellular tower could affect the residents and the community with potential safety risks, intrusive, embarrassing structure, lowered property values, and lessened marketability of homes, especially the homes that are right there when you can see this thing from your backyard, and people are going to come over for a barbecue and go, what, you're going to have to explain it. What the heck is this tree that's 4 times bigger than silver maples that have been growing for 60, 70 years, in my opinion. So that's all that I had. Did you want to add anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Tim Del Riva. I live right by Scott, 10 East Clarendon. I have the smallest house in the community for a reason, right? Low payment, easy taxes, and get the hell out of here and go to Arizona, right? I want to sell it, get out of here. But with that said is, I have 3 kids in this community, 22, 20, and 14. So I'm plugged in this community. I'm that guy that helps every old lady, every person out that needs help. So I'm definitely somebody that's plugged in this community. I've lived in this community for 20 years. I've worked in this community for 15 years. Some of you guys know me. The tower that was affected at Ranhurst, I know a lot about that. That was a building that I managed. Once that building was demolished, there was a lot of people, customers, that were pissed off because it did affect some of their cell coverage. But that's, if you think about it, Mount Prospect is doing the right thing. They just built a ton of new shops over there. Do you see them adding anything that large to their area? It just doesn't look good for the community. So I want you to think about that. They didn't do anything. Do we need to act on that? I don't think so. The other thing I want to talk about is, I didn't come here for the cell coverage. I came here for schools, Hersey, and to sell my property to make a lot of money to get back to Arizona. That's why I came here. And walking out of my property and seeing a friggin' 100-foot fake tree is unacceptable. I don't know where you live or how close you live to it, but I hope you would have somebody to come in and say, don't do this, right? You only could, the old saying about putting lipstick on a pig, right? You only could do so much. Can't make that ugly thing look any better. And it's right, I walk out every day of my property, and if I see that every day, I wouldn't want to build up, or I wouldn't want to sell my property. And then trying to sell my property, who's going to buy that? Like I said, just think about the current owners of that Randhurst building. They didn't make the people that own that area, they didn't make any decisions or have put any cell towers in that area. I think they're smart commissioners and smart people back there. You're not going to put a big item like that in an area where it's going to become an eyesore. Please don't put that in my community. And I just want you to consider, just think about if that was your brother, sister, or your neighborhood. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I just want to say a few quick points. My name's Jerry Simmons. I live 101 East Clarendon. I was going to go off of Ray's, what his presentation was. I think it was page 3 where he was talking about the dropped-off calls. Do you guys have that? Do you have a... Because I thought it said that the drop-off calls were at 83 and Palatine Road.
I think that was one of the intersections that was listed in there, yes.
And there's a tower on Palatine Road, right by your office.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of weird. Another thing I wanted to point out, there's the engineer, there's only one of these monopines in the area that you've been involved with. Did you say?
No.
Correct.
It's the only one I know of.
Oh, only one you know of. So, and I don't know where that, in Olympia Fields or Olympia Heights, wherever you said it was, but I just from looking at the picture, I didn't look at Google Earth, I'm just looking at the stuff you presented. It didn't even look like residential, didn't look like commercial, it looked like an industrial area to me. Looked like there were water tanks or some kind of gas tanks or something in commercial and industrial buildings.
Our home's right, so I don't know.
Did you guys look at it? Yeah, I didn't Google it, so I didn't see.
So, right, so there are homes,
On the other side of that?
exactly, it mirrors almost identically what is happening here. It's on like a church, probably small school / church site, and then there are neighbors that back up to that.
Yeah, so I
Right,
was
so
just pointing out.
it's similar as far as location.
Okay. And then I wasn't sure about, so the towers that we have now, if they were all 3 carriers, or if there were 3 arrays on each one, that's what I couldn't remember.
The surrounding towers?
Yeah, there's those surrounding towers.
Some have 1 carrier, some have 2, some have 3. It was a mix.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to point out was, I don't know how you guys are going to decide this, but this is all about revenue. And, I mean, I'm a cost-benefit analysis guy. And if you're going to add, there's 1 carrier on there now?
1 carrier.
So you're going to add 2 carriers.
We're going to add 2 more, so 3 total.
So we're going to get 2 more revenue streams coming in, and we're only going to get 35%. To me, that doesn't even, it seems to me like it would be 2 or 3 times what we're getting now. That's what I would look at on a cost-benefit analysis. I'm also for, my line of work is I'm a certified residential appraiser, and I've been doing it for like 30 years. And there is an effect, there is a down to putting something like this in your backyard or in anybody's backyard, whenever it's called a negative external obsolescence. So all things being equal, would you buy the house, that backed the monopine, or would you buy the house that backed another house or backed 1-story? I think right now it's a 1-story retail establishment or the fire department. And there is definitely an effect, a monetary effect when you do these kind of things. So I just want everybody to make it aware, because
there's some properties that are going to be affected, and I don't know if it's going to be fair, or maybe they could do some kind of a revenue sharing. And I wasn't even going to say this, but Scott brought it up, and I thought it was a good thing. If we wanted to add, if I wanted to take my shed down and put another shed up, and I had to change something, I don't know that that would be grandfathered either. I think I would have to start all over again and resubmit all my plans. I'm not sure if that's the truth, but I heard him mention it, and I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was a pretty good idea. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I didn't plan on speaking here this morning,
Were you
this
swor-
afternoon.
Were you sworn in when we?
Yeah, I did. swear.
Great, thank you.
I'm Mike Mooney. I've been a resident here for 33 years. I live at 107 Hillside Avenue, which is a couple blocks from Clarendon. It's interesting. I've had AT&T service for many years, so I had a concern. I've had drop calls forever, and I think one time I was sent home with a little micro device that was supposed to amplify my signal, and it didn't work very well. So I had a selfish concern of AT&T being improved with this proposed tower. So it's not being addressed here at all, but I've heard the other concerns about safety and the effect of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's a concern. So aesthetically, I guess I'm not too keen on it. I've planted a lot of trees over the years, and it doesn't look like anything I've seen around here before, but that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Chairman Dash, I wasn't sworn in earlier, so
Perfect.
I want to be official.
Great. So do you swear the testimony you'll give tonight be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great.
I'm Brian Jacobson, a resident of Prospect Heights, 201 West Ridge Avenue. Just have a few things to say. I think there were some things that were pointed out today too, and I'm in commercial construction myself. So I deal with a lot of zoning, a lot of code issues, permitting, and just the fact that this existing tower is grandfathered in, I think that's a point right there, right? But that's not what.
Let me clarify this. The tower is not grandfathered. It is legal to be there because they got legal variations and legal special uses as permitted by the code. So they have the legal right that was granted by a previous city council that runs with the length of time that they've got that land and that area.
Correct.
So it's not grandfathered. It's a legally approved use and a legally approved zoning setback. And that's, so just so everybody's clear.
For the current tower, correct. Right?
For
the current tower that's in place.
And-
My point is that it's not going to be the current tower, it's a proposed tower. So that's, and again, location-wise, that's where it's being proposed, but the new tower is a new tower. It's not the existing tower. So code-wise, and again, I think Mr. Lehor pointed something out earlier, again, it's 500 feet, that was the code, it's now 50 feet. But even Mr. Patel had a good point earlier. What's the question around height-wise? There's no reason why you couldn't get from all three carriers, Sprint, Verizon, and T-Mobile, ask them what the height is and have that proposed versus, 105 feet.
If you could direct your comments to us.
Sure.
Because ultimately, we'll be making recommendations to
Right.
seek, different.
So, yeah, I mean, that was my point, is that,
So you'd like to see
yeah.
potential
I think
changes
that's
in height. from the
it's a
carriers.
reasonable request,
Okay.
is to see what that is. That's pretty much all I had.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I got to just say one more thing. Tim Delariva,
Tim.
Tenny's Clarendon, my wife. I've
Claire?
access-
Ally Delariva.
I'm sorry. Oh, Ally?
Delariva.
Thank you, Ally.
Being in this community, working for JP Morgan Chase, I have access to a lot of stuff in terms of like the affluency of this community. This is a high affluent millionaire next door community. Period. Proven. Sprint, if you have Sprint, this is not directed towards you. Sprint is not an affluent carrier. And I hope that makes a difference, because, you know, if you have affluent homes, you have affluent lifestyles here, and if you bring in that kind of item, you're going to not attract affluent people that are going to raise property values and feed this community.
I wasn't sworn in because I didn't think I was going to talk at all.
Sir.
Sorry.
It's okay, thank you. Do you swear the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So I'm Allie Delarivo. I have lived in the community for 20 years. And I have a couple things. First of all, I've worked for AT&T for 21 years, and I actually toured a cell tower in the middle of nowhere because that's where they should be. And if you could just hear the hissing and the noises when they have multiple carriers inside those towers, it's a much different experience than what we have right now. And I think before we even think about doing this, we need to have someone from the health department think about the health effects of it within a certain amount of feet of each house. Because you don't see structures that looks like in the picture near residential this close. And I'll be honest with you, I came here tonight because my husband wanted me to come with, the neighbors wanted me to. I had no problem with it. 5 more feet, big deal. It's going to look like tree, great. I'm appalled. I'm embarrassed, especially working for a company that had services like this. I've been in the towers. I hear all the zzz. I think it's honestly, it's an eyesore, and I wouldn't be embarrassed to have it in our community. And I think that we really need to, first of all, look at what height maximums it needs to be. One thing, when he said it was a Sprint tower, there's not one Sprint person here that says that there's a problem with this coverage. So why should we as a town be penalized because they want to add 2 to 3 more carriers, and in one sentence it's 3 carriers, then it's 4, and then, to Jerry's point, why would the city only make 35% when we're adding 3 more revenues?
So I want to clarify too, the city in no way benefits from this application. The fire department is the one who has the lease agreement with the carrier, so.
But the fire department should be getting more than 35% hypothetically if 3 to 4 more carriers are going in. Because to everyone's point up here, some of the paperwork said 3, some of it said 4.
So it would have to be 3 because they're not seeking a variance for the 4th. So per code, they would be 3 max.
But to Scott's point, if it's coming down completely, if we knock down our house, which we looked at doing and adding on, or adding up, we would still have to start all over again too.
To the point is, they still have to get a building permit. You would have to get a building permit if you knock down your house and build it up. They're not here for a building permit. If you built your house in the exact same spot that you have now, you wouldn't have to come here for a variance. If you had a variance before because you went over your setback and you wanted to build the exact same envelope, you wouldn't have to come back here. So they don't need to come back here to get approval of doing what they've already got approval from. They're asking for additional approval. That's why they need to come back. So I understand your point, but that's the clarification is they've already gotten approval before this board was here.
Director Pierce, just a quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt your statement here, but it's come up multiple times. If if Crown Castle was here in front of us, or was here in front of you, looking to get a permit to reconstruct the exact same pole on that site, that would be allowed per the variance that they've already been granted, correct?
They could come in and apply to reconstruct the existing pole and build it to the same height parameters and would not need a new zoning approval to tear down. Well, I have to go back and see, one of the issues is a lot of the exhibits that were in that 1998 application were lost in the fire, and, okay, we were able to save the exact ordinances, so I'm trying to reconstruct files, okay? But from testimony of the fire department, from testimony that was given, what I read is, it says 110-foot telecommunication tower, and then the exhibit, I believe, says stealth, okay? That's what we're still searching for that end. But if they wanted to build a tower to there, what they have to get is the special use approvals for the types of antennas that are going on it and the additional carriers, because that original was just for the fire department antenna and the singular user, Sprint. So if they wanted to take down that tower and rebuild it the same sizes, they could do it. It's just now the reconfiguration, the impacts, and that's what we're talking about tonight.
And if it's there for the fire department, that's one thing. I just personally, as a resident that has wireless, and I have AT&T, so it's not going to benefit me. I have no problems with my coverage, and I've not heard anyone that's having a horrible coverage here. And I've lived here for 20 years. I was on the PTO for forever. And I've never heard people say that there's a huge problem here with wireless, and I don't see anyone here that's having a problem with wireless. So I don't see why we should take an eyesore or a Frankenstein or whatever it was called into account when we don't see that big of a need and anyone here complaining about what's currently working or not working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I too had absolutely no intention to talk, and I was not sworn in.
This is one of the.
Anybody else that wasn't sworn in that may want to speak?
You can all stand up. Okay, do you swear the testimony you'll be giving tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great, thank you.
My name is Mary Ellen Siemens, and I live at 207 Owen Place. And I have lived here for 18 years. I have not heard anyone have any problems with cell phone coverage, and my concern is the safety of all this additional radiation, whatever's coming off. So that's what I would love to see a health person come out and give us, opinions on that. Because if we don't need it, I'd rather not have that in Prospect Heights. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else this evening? Okay.
Chairman Nash, would you like me to address some of those items that were brought up, or would you just like to wait for some
Certainly.
questions?
So, correct. And floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. And there's a few things I want to bring up. Mr. Lehar brought up certain angles that I was taking photos from. As you saw in the PowerPoint that we provided, I just went literally right around the site. I really wasn't trying to play games at all. I just was taking different angles from different shots to try and get it from every single view. And it is a photo simulation. That's exactly what it is. It's not exact science. But that's why I added the other photo of the monopine. I'm not trying to trick anybody. And the monopine is basically a result of you asking us to come back with something more creative. The traditional monopole, my personal opinion, I think a white monopole, even with full arrays, blends in the best with the Chicago skyline. I've grown up here. Fortunately, we have cloudy days more than any other days, and I think it blends in. You even have a white water tank, and it blends in. But you asked for creative solutions. This is the best that we can come up with. This is not something that the carriers do often. It's incredibly expensive for them to build and to maintain. But if you don't feel that that is a better solution, then we have to look at the full antenna array and keep it the white monopole. You have 3 RF experts who build out these networks who are telling you there is an issue with this coverage if they don't address it. We have shown the need. It's part of the package that you have. If you don't have any other solutions, where can we go? You have a 30 by 40 basically area, lease area. Those are hard to find in this area. Where are you going to find the spot to put that footprint? You have an existing tower. I know Commissioner Patel brought up the height question. You had the DC Jones, Deputy Chief Jones get up and say that they have been operating at 102 feet for 22 years. Now you're asking them to drop significantly? They have to maintain that height. They'd have to do a full analysis to tell you if it isn't. So if they're at that height, why wouldn't you allow the carriers just to go right below that? 93, 85, 71.
So we're not asking them to do anything. We're just trying to gather information tonight. This is,
But that's
information
a big
seeking.
ask. I mean, you're asking to shrink it down because now you're covering a much smaller area. And
We're saying, what if?
Yeah.
What if the whole height was decreased?
That's a significant ask to get all that data that quickly. And I think the answer is going to be no, based on what I can see. But some other things that were brought up is the RF safety. I highlighted in the beginning, it's pretty clear what the federal law states. But I understand that RF emissions, there's a lot of stuff out on the internet. But these carriers are required to meet a certain guideline. If they don't, they lose their license. It's very serious. What we could do to address their concerns, if this is approved, is we can order a third-party study. We can offer 1 or 2 or even 3 RF safety companies to perform a theoretical study. What you do is you send them the plans, you send them the antennas and the frequencies and what they're operating at. They will come back, third party that the companies will pay for, and they will tell you that they will meet the permissible levels set by the FCC and not be a RF hazard. But I want to stress, these antennas are everywhere. More and more hospitals are not only leasing their antenna, their rooftop space, but they're asking to have every floor include antennas so their doctors and patients have seamless coverage. They're on schools, they're on churches. They are part of the landscape. There's no escaping it. It's the only way these things work. So, co-location. I just want to mention, I think Tim was the one who mentioned, or it might have been Brian, about co-location and how this is only for Sprint. This is for Sprint to add antennas and to bring Verizon and T-Mobile onto the structure. All 3 have demonstrated they have a need. Sprint is operating here, but they're operating at a deficiency. They need to add that full array. I believe that was it. Regarding the appraisal values, I know that Tim is a certified appraiser, but I believe you'd have to do a detailed study to show that all those towers that are surrounding it, that are well within less than 200 feet from residential property lines, have those property values gone down directly attributable to those towers? I don't think so. I don't know. But these towers exist in your community and surrounding it and all over the Chicagoland area. And they're part of the landscape. And they're needed. So I'm here to answer any other questions that you have.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. What was it? That's fine, come on up. That's fine, come on
No,
up.
there still seems to be a little confusion as far as like the records from the 1998, that whole type of thing, not being available and for a stealth tower. For clarification, is a stealth tower the concealed tower that's up there currently?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, what we don't have because of the fires, we don't know how those records or how that was approved.
And the issue is it was approved for that. They're proposing changes to an exterior because their testimony both in April and tonight was that that particular style of tower, the technology cannot meet the needs. That's what they've testified to tonight. And because they're changing from the internally enclosed antenna system to an exterior mounted system, and now that they came back with a different concealment application because that's the direction that it looked like was going in April, they have to get the special use because that's what's different. That's what they're
Because it's not concealed, it's no longer
Correct.
concealed.
Correct. And they're
Right.
saying that they've testified and in their application show that they cannot get the coverage they need at the various bandwidths with that style of pole.
Right.
Okay, it said that in April. You were here, there was a
Sure.
lot of discussion about, can you do this? Is there other options? To their credit, they've come back with a different type of a concealment program to try.
Yeah.
But that was the issue. You didn't want to see a tower with a lot of racks on it.
Correct.
That was the
And
challenge.
to furthermore, so you consider the micropine concealed?
Well, that's what the applicant has brought forward. It's not my opinion one way or
Okay,
another.
okay.
That's what they were brought back to try and address the needs. So the special use permit then is because it's changing the type of antenna and the impacts.
Right, okay.
So aesthetically, do you like the monopine or do you like the pole with the arrays on it?
Neither. I'm okay with what's up there now, but I don't think that it's for me to make a decision one way or the other to what I like better. I think that the onus should be on Insight and Castle and anybody in the other carriers to try to find some other piece of 10 by 20 property that's not hovering over our downtown, and it's not 25, 50 feet from my backyard and 75 feet from my neighbors. There's safety concerns. You know, we talked the last time about, like, you know, itself, if there's a windy day or, you know, it falls down. You can guarantee it's going to come down completely and not, in a worst-case scenario, come down within 50 feet where I live into my backyard where we could be, you know, whatever. I don't think that, I think that there's got to be some more due diligence in regards to some potential. They got the maps, they got everything. Find another school, find a hospital, find a water tower, put them up there. And if we do move forward or things get approved, I think that it's extremely important that the word is out to the entire Prospect Heights community. There were several people here that weren't planning on talking this evening. They heard both sides of what was going on, what potential impact this could have on our perception. They came up and they talked. I don't think that this decision should be made in a vacuum. Somehow, some way, this has to get on the website, have people come out there, and let them provide their opinion. But if this goes up, or gets approved or moves down the line, and then it goes up, I think it's going to be unfair to the residents to be uninformed. I don't think it should be the residents that are directly infected to be the primary ones driving this whole thing to make sure that 17,000 people are aware of what potentially could happen to their downtown. And I'll leave it at that. But I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, so commissioners, additional comments, discussion?
We close the hearing.
Want to close the public hearing?
No, we're supposed to,
Before we close the
Before we
public
vote.
hearing, are there any other questions or discussions that could need clarification from either the applicant or any of the others that provided testimony? Because any additional commentary from them would be considered part of testimony. That has to be occurred during the open meeting.
We can have our internal comments after.
We could, after there's other questions or other clarification that needs to be had, when that happens, we can close PZBA can close the public hearing, and then it's just deliberations here and occasional clarification, but it will not
we
constitute.
could keep it open until we vote, though, correct?
Correct. Well, you'd have to,
We could close the public hearing before we take our vote.
correct.
So is there any, I don't think there's any downside in keeping it open at this
No.
point. Okay, so let's just keep it open right now, in case.
I'll speak mine, I've probably been the most vocal here, so just from me living here and saying I don't think there's been enough due diligence to decide, and we don't have enough data to decide, okay, let's go with 110 feet. I think we need to wait for the fire department to tell us what they really need. I know there's a lot of potential work to have that be done, but to put in something, we've seen pictures, we don't have any visual evidence of what this really looks like. None of us actually seen it, and if we choose to put this up and it doesn't look close to what we want it to look like, we're stuck. We are stuck with this thing in our downtown. And then every time all of us drive Camden Palmer's, we're gonna be like, we should have done a little more due diligence. So I think.
So your two items are height, and then you don't feel that the pictures and renderings provide enough information as to what the
I don't think renderings ever
monopine-
will provide enough. For us, it's all 2D. It's just 2D. We don't have 3D views of this. As one of the pictures looks like it's an advertised tree, but we know it's not.
But I mean, driving to Olympia Fields, does that?
I don't know,
if you're able to
potentially
see
it could. It potentially could satisfy some visual things, but I do think also not knowing if this could be lowered and how it would impact, like, all the towers that are on that zoning map, they don't have all three carriers on them. What if they posed but had all three carriers on them, and then they lowered this? How would that change this coverage map? There's just so many variables that haven't been looked at, in my opinion. And I know there's a lot of cost to that, potential. But I think it's worth doing, just because of where it's impacting. This was, in areas where we're not gonna drive by and see, I'm not as sensitive to it, but the fact that it's right behind the Walgreens we all go to, and everyone here I'm sure goes to Walgreens, you're gonna see it every time you go there now. I think there's gotta be a lot of consideration in there, and I don't think we've crossed all the Ts and dotted all the Is to make the decision on it. That's my opinion on it.
Perfect. Commissioner Sayward? Do you have any?
Well, one other thing, I know that when we talked about this in April, a lot of the same concerns came up. It wasn't just the visual aspect, the safety was something that was discussed, but we also had asked them to look at other sites as possibilities. And I know we talked about sites, but I never heard them say, did they actually look at other sites that could be considered that weren't adjacent to the residential and in the middle of our downtown. The sites that were talked about were just the existing towers and how the coverage is impacted by the existing towers. But I, again, would like them to see if there's something, someplace that could be not next to our residential area with this kind of an impact and not right in the middle of our downtown.
I do want to say, he had mentioned one thing about, okay, if you go with a lower pole, you have more poles. Well, that might not be the worst thing. If we have more poles as one really big pole, I think that's got to be looked at.
I can address her if you want me to.
Yeah, why don't you come up?
Do you want to add some there? Or do you want
Travis?
to- yeah, you might
Why
as
don't we
well
get
ask them
everyone?
now. Why don't we can have them address each
So,
one.
right, so in regards to
So
other
we don't
sites, so
forget
for example, at the intersection of downtown Prospect Heights, I mean, Kitty Corner is actually Mount Prospect. And I know there's a small water tower there, there's a golf course. I mean, has anything in Mount Prospect been
So,
evaluated?
yeah, so to evaluate, you have to look at we're provided a search ring, is what it's called. So it takes into account the significant gap in coverage that's produced by science, engineering, and they take a look at that and they say, okay, this is the ideal location. That location actually could be in your backyard. And so then they take a search ring and they say, this is as wide as we can go. And anywhere, any property within this, we can perhaps locate this tower. So then we take a look at that. We have specialists that go out and try to negotiate with landlords to find a viable property. So we have done that. We have looked at other properties, Caddy Corner, as you mentioned, at the golf course. There are significant issues there. We've been talking with them for about a year, and we cannot get any agreements with.
Is that because
any
Mount Prospect's codes wouldn't allow an antenna of this nature, or?
It's the same zoning issues, actually. I think it's a little more restrictive than yours.
In regards to
At this point in time, it has nothing to do with zoning, but the zoning code is definitely restrictive. So we take all those things. So there's a significant gap in coverage that we have to look at, and that's why we're here. And then the second thing is to find that, we have to look at least intrusive means. And we also have to find a site that is zonable and leasable and zonable, in that order, of course. So we haven't found any property that's leasable. There's just no other properties that have come to us or that we have found that is willing to enter a lease agreement with us. We have an existing site in which we have an agreeable landlord in terms of a lease, and that is this fire department. So that's kind of how we got here. To answer your question, we have been spending all the time that from before until now to try to negotiate some other place, but it's been unfruitful.
Commissioner Mellon, anything to add? Because ultimately, we're going to, make a recommendation and vote. So, I mean, everyone's entitled to obviously vote as they see fit. And right now, I guess I would be, if you,
I would suggest at this time, before we put that out there, that we hear from all the commissioners.
correct. No, I'm saying though, is that ultimately, like if you would have a condition that you'd like to recommend, I mean, I think at this point, for me, a condition to the motion would be that the monopine would be maintained, you know, again, so if you have anything that would be a condition.
Well, there's another potential option. If there is a concern about heights and lack of data and you don't feel comfortable with the data, this can always be continued seeking more information. However, that would have to be consensus. So otherwise, you have to make a vote on the information provided tonight. Okay, and that's always an option. But I know this group likes to usually conduct its business and get it all done within the time frame. But
Well, again, I don't know that based on the testimony we heard tonight, that there's a lot of variables in regards to height. I mean, we're talking, like, they're
Correct.
really asking for 3 feet, and if the monopine is gonna go down 5 feet, 7 feet, I don't know if that's a game changer for anyone on the board, you
I
know?
think the driving factor is what the fire department wants, number one. Number two, looking at, if the fire department doesn't need 100 and so many feet, and they can live with 80, what does 80 feet do to their coverage? Secondarily, what other sites have we looked at? And if we do add a couple more towers in Prospect Heights, where that's, at least has got to be explored, has that happened, and is there maps for that? That's minimally something that would give us a little more information on.
Commissioner Gordon, are you asking us to put up multiple towers in the town, village, in the city limits? We're here proposing one tower with 3 carriers, which is in harmony with your code. Your code requires towers to hold 3 carriers. You're telling us to lower it and only add 1, and then add other towers that don't meet 3 carriers. That contradicts your zoning code. We're following your zoning code.
I don't think you're following what I'm saying.
I am following what you're saying. We are proposing a tower with 3 carriers to meet your zoning code. The purpose of the zoning code is to promote co-location and eliminate the proliferation of towers. You have an existing tower here that we're proposing to replace it in order to add a full array for Sprint and add Verizon and T-Mobile, who have evidence to say that they have coverage issues. You are doubting their radio frequency engineers, saying, why don't you lower it where you won't be able to add as many co-locations and add more towers when we can't even find another candidate to replace this one? That is not a viable solution, with all due respect.
Is it more expensive to have 1 tower or 2 towers?
2 towers is always more expensive, but it has
Okay,
nothing
so
to do with expense.
I don't know that.
You are surrounding.
I don't know that.
It has
I am
nothing to
telling
do
you
with
right now,
expense.
I don't know if.
I'm
your
telling you
con-
that I showed you surrounding sites, and there was a gap in coverage. If I add more towers over to where there's sites that already exist, how does that solve the coverage issue right here? If you have a hole in your yard and there's no sprinkler head, and I add a sprinkler head where there's already a sprinkler head, that's not covering the issue. We have a coverage gap here. We need antennas here. The heights that we provided, the maps that they provide testimony saying if we build antennas at this height, this meets the objective. If you're asking us to take 30, 40-foot height, I'm going to tell you that the RF engineers are going to say, no, that does not meet the coverage
But what I'm
objective.
telling you is, we have 4 other poles in this area, right?
Correct, where they already are located.
And let me finish, can I?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, we have 4 other, give us data where if you add carriers to all 4 of those, let me finish, and then potentially lower the height, will that get us the data? You don't have that data.
I can tell you that the answer is no. If they could solve the coverage issue by co-locating on those towers, we wouldn't be here tonight. There's no way Verizon wants to go through all this. They want to get their network up as soon as possible. If they could add antennas to the existing towers that I pointed to you, we wouldn't even be here.
Adding
Verizon would be here.
Verizon to all those towers and potentially lowering this pole. I would personally like to see the data of what that would be.
I'm telling you that's not going to work. I'm going to tell you right now it's not going to work. If they were already on some of those existing towers, and if you added it, you're not putting antennas in the place where they're needed. Verizon would already be on those towers, and they wouldn't even be an applicant here. Same way with T-Mobile. That's what RF has told you in this application. That's what they demonstrate in the maps.
Okay, so that's not worth our
No, I do not think it's worth it.
We would also be then looking at the same processes for those towers, because for the exact same rationales of the code, is we'd be looking at special use amendments to each and every one of those towers as well.
Okay.
Just to bring.
Understood, yeah, understand.
Chairman Dash, I have a problem with the fact that the special use permit that was granted in 1998 was for a different type of a tower. It's the stealth tower. The fact that it was given a variance to be within that 500 feet was for the stealth tower, not for the type of tower that is being proposed here. So I have a problem with
The fact that we're not granting a variance for the proximity to the residential neighborhood.
Yes.
So again, and I have to assume that Director Peterson obtained an opinion from our legal counsel. I mean, obviously, they're not represented here this evening. So I guess if you can't tell us with certainty that our legal position is that it's not required, then that's a separate matter.
That's one concern, and then also when that tower went in, it was for the benefit of our fire department. It was not for the benefit of having
And
3 or
Sprint.
4 different carriers.
And Sprint.
And Sprint later, right.
No,
Sprint built the
was
tower.
applicant.
Sprint built the tower and put the antennas in there. It was for Sprint coverage.
So it was for Sprint and the fire department.
Right,
It was
and then
for
the
one-
code was changed to make sure all new towers are 3 carrier capable, and that tower is not.
Okay, but again, it was all concealed within that, the
Correct.
stealth tower.
There is a property along Rand Road that had 3 towers on the little over a quarter-acre site at the time, all constructed within the time when each carrier had their own towers, right along Rand Road. And subsequently, one has been decommissioned, but those are still active towers, and they're not far from our residential district. I couldn't give you an exact footage, but it went through the same processes.
So did that one start with a stealth tower as well, or?
No, those were all full array towers. One was actually this tower at the fire department and a tower at 1315 North Rand Road were approved at the same time.
This is the only stealth tower in the city limits.
Correct. All the other towers are full array towers.
So that answers your question, if this was approved as a stealth tower, it must have been.
I believe,
Right.
that may have been what the recommendation was.
Right, it has to be, because then, otherwise they would have done it right.
Mhm.
Right, okay.
Right, and that's why they're back seeking a special use for this new type of tower. So,
Because it wasn't officially rejected, it was withdrawn to go look at and keep the ability.
Correct, it was not rejected. You asked us to look at other options. We need a lot more time to evaluate all these options. We're back here tonight.
right, and again, I don't know that if you came back to us with a report that said we can shave off 8 feet, 7 feet, 12 feet, 18, I don't know that that is a.
How is that going to impact?
I don't know that that's going to be enough to move the needle, enough to change your opinion, so.
I think we have to look at, back when they approved this as a stealth tower, there's a reason it was approved as a stealth tower. It is where it is, and it's in the heart of our downtown. If we're gonna look at potentially changing the tower with arrays on the outside, that height is concerning to me. That is gonna be nice, or being a tree or not a tree. If we look at a 50 or 60-foot potential tree, and then potentially doing another one, I think that would help. That would be something that me as a board member would consider. At 110 feet, I think we potentially would regret this decision down the road.
So you're saying, with that logic, with all due respect, you would rather push down and have a monopine or full tower at 60 feet and have multiple 60-foot towers with 3 or 4 carriers on all around Prospect Heights? Where are we going to put these? Where are we going to put them? That's very difficult. We're telling that we can solve this with one site. And that's in harmony with your code.
That's not an acceptable solution to me.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I guess that
110 foot.
if it's all based on aesthetics, I can come in here with anything. You just don't want to see anything. These are the 2 options that we've come up with. This is a need. And I don't have any other candidates. I don't have any interested landlords. I don't have any sites that I can propose this that meets the RF objective. This does. And this is not unusual what we're proposing. I think I've demonstrated that tonight. Talked about neighboring communities that have these types of towers right in their downtown. Glenview, Wilmette, we can go all the way around the clock.
The one you mentioned of Glenview was up at Waukegan Road.
Correct.
Very busy road.
Downtown area. That's their downtown.
It's considerably different than what we have here. Considerably different.
I'm laughing, yeah, anyways. Downtown Prospect Heights. Don't blink or you'll miss it. Okay, and lived here long enough to say that, 43 years. So, okay, again, and sometimes, you do this all the time, right?
Yes.
Maybe a no vote's always a no vote. Maybe there's a swing vote, I don't know. So that's what I'm saying, let's, and obviously, or not obviously, we can certainly vote tonight, right? Or is the applicant, you could ask to be tabled, to come back with more information.
I don't know what material that we could provide that we haven't already.
And we are a recommending body.
Yeah, you are a recommending
So-
body. This is the second time we presented.
Correct. So, and based on your testimony, it doesn't feel that you're going to move the needle a whole lot in regards to height. Okay? It sounds like from an aesthetic standpoint, you've come to us with an option that, I'm sure if you had something else aesthetic, you would have been here tonight with it. So it sounds like from an aesthetic standpoint, you've put your best foot forward. It doesn't sound like you've been able to find sites elsewhere.
Correct.
Okay. So I feel like you've brought all the information to us, and each commissioner is going to vote as they see fit.
Very good.
So, so Commissioner Mellon, again, do you have any, so the applicant can understand too, if you have any specific concerns?
No, I think one of the issues that was brought, if this were to be recommended tonight, and if it were to pass city council, I would like to see it, see somehow, and I'm not sure exactly the right way to word this, Director Peterson, but the representation in the drawing that Commissioner Dash has on the top of her stack there shows the tree down to, I'm guessing, 20, 30, 40 feet from the ground, which is significantly different than the one that we saw in Olympia Fields. And quite frankly, I wish that had been part of this packet, because I would have gone down there to see it, because this is an important decision. So
I think
I was only made aware of it yesterday, and just didn't have an opportunity to go do that bit of research. But that one seems a little awkward with only the top 20, 30, 40 feet as with the foliage on it. I'd like to see it more in, if it were to be approved, to be in scope of what's depicted there in terms of scale.
So you're looking at the scale of the foliage part of the tower to be more towards the base, to add as much coverage to that as possible.
Right, I mean, the picture of the one from Olympia Fields,
Yeah.
from the street, even the view that you brought up is not particularly pleasing. And I understand, I've seen the Google Maps of the buildings adjacent and why you made that choice,
Yeah.
and where the homes are and why you guys made that choice. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form, decrying it. It's just, doesn't fit in with this location. I think the aesthetic of that, while not in harmony with the trees adjacent, is closer to what the adjacent properties represent than anything else we've seen so far. So,
Right now, let me finish with the other commissioners. So, Machi, would you like to?
So where I'm really getting stuck is at this proximity to a residential area. Per memo here, it says that the existing tower received relief. However, due to complete removal and installation of a taller pole, reconfiguration of the antennas, new approvals are necessary. So if we don't need the approval for the proximity to the residential area, then then I would have a problem with the height. If we're changing the height by 3 feet, why can't we stay at current feet and not ask for variance? That's one. And two, if we're asking for special use to add additional carriers, then I would have a real problem having those carriers only 50 feet from residential area.
By the way, I don't think it's 50 feet. And Google Earth, it looked more like 90. I can get an
Okay,
exact
90.
measurement, yeah, but
Okay,
it's
so-
one
so
thing or another. Yeah.
I guess the point is,
I believe, yeah.
I guess the point is there is a code.
We have a
And the
plan.
code was developed for a reason. So all these studies about radiation, all this different stuff, it all meshes together, right? The code says 500 feet. We have other areas that supposedly have 300, 200 feet. Now we're getting closer to 50 feet. What's the limit? I mean, where do we, if we keep granting variances, then pretty soon we'll be having, towers in our backyards. That's where I just can't get over that.
And thank you for pointing out my original staff memo. That was the position that we had taken on the original application when this first came in. There was clarification. I can get that formally in writing, but the discussion with the attorneys late last week, after this memo was sent out, clarified that zoning issue that they had the right based on the original legality of the approvals granted by that ordinance. So they have a legal ordinance entitling them in that location. So, and I apologize for that.
No, that's okay, but it's
But
still.
It's still your other things, that's why we have the special use
Right.
process.
Right, so maybe I completely don't understand why we have to go up by 3 feet. If you stay at 112, right, then you don't have to ask for variance on that.
That's correct. I mean, you're right now, the tower portion is 102. The whip antenna that's up there, that is the fire department's antenna, extends it to 112. We are asking to extend the steel from 102 to 110, and then put a 5-foot, and then their antenna will go to 115. So technically, if it's at 110 or 112, we're going to 115, it's 3 feet. Could we live with 3 feet lower? Yes, they
Right,
can.
so Commissioner, if they said, okay, we'll go to the 112 that's currently existing, can you overcome the proximity to the residential neighborhood?
Well, then I don't see the reason for asking for variance.
They gotta go for more of a radius.
Wait, well, no, that's different, that's a different thing, but that's special use.
They're going from stealth to.
To full array.
Full array.
That's the special
variance.
use.
That's the
That's
special.
That's special use, right.
And
That's
that's-
special.
the
So now we're down to only one variance.
It's not technically a variance motion, so.
Okay, so now we're down to only to special.
So it's
use.
only a special use.
Right, right.
If we agree to maintain the 112, we're only at requesting a special use, to go from the stealth canisters to the full arrays.
Right.
But the diameter is so much greater than the stealth.
We have to keep in mind why there was a stealth one approved originally.
Right, so now,
There's a reason.
now when we're asking for special use still has to be up to code, right? Code is still 500 feet from the residential area. I understand the pole is there, but the antennas are whatever feet in diameter, so they come even closer to the property if we want to be technical, right?
To help clarify that, the variance was granted for a specific type of pole because that was the least intrusive at the time from how I envisioned, from the little bit that I've seen of that stuff. What the special use is doing, it will never meet the 500 feet because the pole is less than that. But it expands the profile, expands the site. That's what we're discussing. You'll never get the 500 feet, so that's not what's in question. It's just, is that carrier livable? Is it not?
And didn't you testify, Director Peterson, or not testify, didn't you state tonight that none of the cell towers in Prospect Heights meet the 500 feet?
That is correct.
So, yeah.
I get
One.
it,
Right.
but again, if we keep granting variances closer and closer to property lines, where do we stop?
The issue will come at this point in time is because not a single tower in this town is compliant.
What's the next closest? We're at 50 right now, approximately.
Even the one behind Dave's Auto is less than 100 feet.
I looked at these on Google Earth. Again, it's not, I didn't do a survey, I didn't walk it off, but they're all less than 200 feet.
Correct. So the question then becomes, they've got the right to have it there. The issue they don't have the right at this point in time is the additional carriers, and that's the question of the special use.
Correct.
Yeah, and the reconfiguration and restyling of that. That's what was specified brought forward. They came back with a different issue. Now, the question comes, is what they
Which
brought
one do
back
you like?
now.
You like
is
the
it
monopine?
meet your
You like
needs,
the regular one?
or that, or it doesn't apply at this point then? You know, they've testified, their RF engineers testified that there's a need and a coverage point, but it's up, the rest of it is up to the special PZBA, looking at the standards and putting that.
So, right, so if you're not comfortable with the new communication tower having the full array on it, then that's certainly your prerogative.
Right.
So again, trying to give you a lay of the land as to what the different.
Like I said, we presented all the material. We think it's
Correct.
very convincing, and this is our second time presenting. We came back with a stealth option.
Correct.
We need a vote.
Still their prerogative to vote how they
Yes.
choose to vote. Commissioner Scott? Commissioner DeGraff, do you have anything to add or any
My
potential
biggest,
conditions?
my biggest concern is, obviously, if it did pass, or one way or another, it's going to go to city council,
Correct.
that if city council does approve it, obviously, we're a recommending body, that I do agree that the foliage would need to go lower.
Okay.
Now, how much lower? I'm not a design architect. I don't know. I would think it would need to go at least to a height of a fence, or at least to match the existing foliages around. I'm having a problem with the volume, the width, the diameter. You know, when I look at the pictures that were presented, you know, the big trunk, and the appearance of it, my personal opinion is it's going to look funny in the downtown area. And I think it's going to put a label on us as, oh, you're the town with that fake pine tree. And I am a builder, and I do build in Prospect Heights, and I am currently building a house in Prospect Heights, and I am concerned with values of property. I've lived here 25 years, and our value has gone down because of the recession. It's coming back up. I know their property because he was a personal friend of mine that built that house, and he passed away during the construction of their house. And I don't like it. I can live with the stout tower, but I really have a problem with this monopole, but that's my own opinion.
Okay.
Just so we're speaking facts here, and there was not a full, what is the full diameter of that new proposed pole?
You mean the
proposed-
platforms?
No, when the actual size, because there's an.
It's shown in the CDs.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what
Dan,
was here.
right, it's shown in the CDs that I mean, I have detailed CDs to show it. I can't imagine the circumference of the tower would have that big of an impact.
Well, no, I'm just
Yeah.
asking because you have the circumference of the tower, then you have the circumference
Yeah.
of the.
I can tell you that the
What
full
tree-
antenna arrays, the platforms, are 12 to 15 feet wide. And the reason why is you need certain separation. You have Verizon adding 9 antennas. They're going to have 3 antennas per sector. And those antennas range from anywhere from 5 to 8 feet. So you need to have a 3 to 4 foot separation. That's about 12 to 15 feet. You have 3 sectors facing in each direction. That tower is going to be a standard width. I can get it for you, but it's probably going to be closer, thicker than what's there.
I think, looking at, I kind of try to scale it off. The top of that tree will be 15 feet wide, the foliage, to cover the rays.
Wow.
Potentially. And then as you get down, as you taper a tree down, you'll get to about 30 feet wide. 30 feet is the width of this room.
I don't think
That's
they're going to
15 feet
have,
closer to the property line.
yeah. I don't think they're going to be 30 foot wide. That's impossible. It's going to have to look
Based on
smaller
the
than
drawing
that.
you spent us, that's how I scale.
That's a simulation, but 30 foot wide, that's crazy. So
We
you're
don't know
talking
that.
about having, we have to maintain a certain aesthetic here, but you can't have a 30 foot wide RF transparent material that is just. So this monopine was offered as a possible solution. Like you said, Chairman, either you like it or you don't. But there is a need here. And this commission is obligated to work with these carriers, and if they deny this, provide a solution. I've yet to see any other solutions that are practical. And this is a need. So I'd be curious if you were to vote no, why you would vote no.
Aesthetics, height. What else have we heard?
With
Safety.
See, and honestly,
RF safety cannot
I am
factor
very,
into
I
your decision.
personally
But that's what we're.
am not concerned with safety at all. I mean, they're gonna have to operate within with guidelines or
FCC
dictated
guidelines.
by, right. So I don't feel the need to argue safety. I mean, there are other people who ensure our safety in regards to the technology used in here. So personally, I don't have a concern that doesn't negate the fact that other people have concerns. So
Need is another one.
Right, and again, I'm not going to debate need. Clearly, they wouldn't be spending money on infrastructure if there wasn't a need here. And so again, we're all going to have our hot buttons, right? Whether it be aesthetics or proximity or need or height, you know, that's why they have boards comprised of people with different backgrounds. So you get a variety of perspectives on this. And again, we are a recommending body, so the city council could feel completely different on this topic. So what I've heard tonight is that if we're going to proceed with a vote, if we proceed with a vote, the conditions I've heard would be in regards to maintaining that the petitioner would be obligated to maintain the aesthetics of the monopine, and that ultimately the foliage proposed on the monopine would have to be at an appropriate scale. And I guess they would work with staff to determine that, I guess. So those are the only two conditions that I've really heard that would potentially.
And that the height would stay the same.
Right, we would drop down 3 feet and go from 115 to 112.
And applicant apparently has agreed to eliminate from their application the variation for height. So the overall height of the proposed tower and lightning rod would not exceed 112 feet.
Correct.
So Dan, you said that if we
I will
chose
be-
to table it, it'd have to be,
We could table it for 1 month and bring it back, if there was any studies that they wanted, it would also.
but the commissioners would have to vote, determine if it would be tabled.
And what specifically, what additional information you need, and have to be very specific to the petitioner.
He'd want to ask for that first, right?
No, you can ask for it as a PZBA if you don't feel you're comfortable. Okay,
Right.
you have that right to do it. But when they come back, it does not reopen testimony that we've already heard. It would only be
That's
on the
specific.
testimony that is brought forward at that meeting. So the public's more than welcome to come, you just can't redo that. It would have to be, any cross-exam or any questions would be on the, specifically geared to the testimony you're requiring them to bring back. Because they've already given the rest of the testimony tonight, so it would not be open for re-testimony at the next time. It would be on what you're specifically asking them to bring back.
So if we're already have decided on this, and whatever they bring back is not gonna change their mind on this, there's no point asking for tabling it, correct?
Very well.
Right, so if you're asking for additional information on, well, they're not asking for height variance anymore, but on height,
Yeah.
then that
They'd
would,
have to be some different application, they can come back with a different application at that point. If they wanted to do something lower or multiple at that point, or different locations.
But in all fairness to the applicant, they've come one other time before. They were given direction with you to come back with a different proposal there. So, we should either be very specific in what we ask them to do moving forward, or make a recommendation to the council tonight.
My recommendation is that they presented us with all the information really necessary. And how much more information can they give the board? I mean, I think we would be wasting their time and their money and their effort.
Right, so like,
I mean,
can we
right
straw
now-
poll?
right now-
Or do we have to take it?
Especially considering the fact that they've made it clear that there's no other lease sites available that could potentially plug the holes with smaller towers, you know. We could look for a study that showed what the effect of smaller towers would be, but if you can't put them up, then there's no point in asking for it, so. And the tower that they're proposing is a fairly standard height in the industry, so it seems like that is, you know, the appropriate, if you're gonna approve a tower, this is the appropriate size tower.
Okay, so it sounds like there's not support from the commissioners to request specific information that would warrant tabling this. Is that correct, Machi?
Not,
Yep,
yes.
correct.
If we're only looking at aesthetics, that is not enough. I mean, I think this is the best in class as far as aesthetics is concerned.
Okay. So then, it feels like we may be ready to posture a vote, and if that's the case, then I would like to
We have
close.
need to close.
I know what I'm saying, I wanted to confirm that I'm going to close the public hearing.
Scott had something to say, but we told him late.
I'd make a motion to close the public meeting.
Yeah,
I'll second it.
okay. All those in favor of, or would you, Jen, please do a?
Can they still talk?
No, that's what I'm saying. I have a motion on the table to close the public hearing in a second. So we'll do it by a roll call. So if anyone is objecting to closing the public hearing, then they can vote no. So Jen, vote,
Commissioner Patel.
No.
Commissioner Sabert.
Aye.
Commissioner Mellon.
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa.
No.
Commissioner DeGraff.
No.
And.
so you want to keep it
Chairman
open?
Well,
That we're voting
on the,
We're voting to keep the public hearing open, so we can take more testimony from the public.
We're voting to close the public hearing,
Or-
and I vote would be to close the public
Yeah.
hearing.
I
no
propose to
vote
I
close
thought,
to keep the
I thought
public
there was a request to, I vote to keep it open because I
Okay,
think there
so
was a
it's a no.
Yeah,
request.
Perfect.
that's where I'm at. yeah.
Okay.
It's 3-3.
Did I didn't vote. Did I vote?
No, Commissioner Dash, or Chairman Dash.
No.
All right. Anybody else have any last comment or any comment to say?
Yeah, I think that we're talking about the height, and that seems to be kind of like a big thing. I think that the width, although they did come back with what they considered, a more suitable option, and they did, but I think the width, when you talk about the size of it, is almost going to be worse because of the fact that it's going to be just that much bigger and that much out of place compared to all the natural trees that are around. So I think when you're looking at, the height, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really bother us now. You don't see the toothpick now, but there's not a lot of discussion around the different arrays and whether it's 15, 20 feet or whatever higher. When I looked at the blueprints, I thought that it was going to be closer to 50 feet at the top and then straight down. And whether the micropine goes further down, I don't know if it's relative, with the exception of when you come from Maple Street and you could actually see the bottom of it. But from downtown, it's blocked by Walgreens and it's blocked by the fire station. You don't see it. But there is one part. But I think we need to take in consideration more than anything else is just the cosmetics of it. And sounds like there's a reason that no other city, whether it be for leasing purposes or anything else, has granted them the ability to do so. So why is it up to us? It's not up to us to approve it, but he says, "Why? I want to know why you wouldn't." I'd like to know why we would. That's all I have to say.
Okay, anyone else like to speak to this under the public hearing? Okay, so I'd like a motion, please, to close the public hearing on application number ZBA 20-02.
So moved.
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Let's do a voice vote this time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This is,
Discussion, any other discussion amongst you guys?
yeah, so any other discussion? Okay. And you, I'm assuming the applicant would like us to proceed with a vote? Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion, please, to receive into the public record the staff review of compliance with this application with the zoning standards as presented by staff this evening, and to make these standards a part of the official record for the application.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We also need to, I would also like a motion, please, to receive into the public record additional evidence presented this evening. Exhibit 7 being the email provided
And
by,
photos.
yeah, email and photos dated January 17th, 2020. Exhibit 8 would be the
PowerPoint presentation.
presentation made by our petitioner this evening. And Exhibit 9 would be the presentation prepared by Mr. and Mrs. Lehor. So motion, please, to receive these 3 exhibits into the public record.
Also move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to limit my comments. All right, so we're going to go ahead, and I'd like a motion, please, to recommend that the city council approve the applicant's request to seek a special use in order to replace the existing pole with a pole that contains an arrays. Conditions of the approval would include maintenance of the proposed monopine and foliage reviewed and approved by staff to provide appropriate scale. I'd like a motion, please, to
Wouldn't
make
we,
that,
wouldn't we also, the height?
the applicant withdrew that.
Okay.
So we're only addressing the special use request.
Correct, with the conditions of maintenance and
And the
foliage.
to be in scale with the surrounding area by staff.
Okay, so Jen, if you would please,
I'll make that motion.
sorry, we need a motion.
And I'll second.
So Jen, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Mellon,
Aye.
Commissioner Kempa,
No.
Commissioner Sayward,
No.
Commissioner DeGraff,
No.
Commissioner Patel,
No.
Chairman Dash.
Aye.
Motion fails 3-2.
And this will then appear before the city council.
Hold on.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
missing something. It's 4-2, excuse me, I forgot Scott, Chairman DeGraff.
And this, will this officially be on the February 10th agenda?
I will get it written up. The goal is to have it for the February 10th city council meeting. Agendas will go out, so I'll be in contact with you, Ray. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next item of business on our agenda would be updates on previous applications.
I got to find my agenda. Yesterday, the Everclean Car Wash opened for a short limited period. You can get free car washes at our new car wash. They are offering a discount on their membership, their monthly membership. Yeah, right by the bike shop. Yeah. Yep, that's.
Why are car washes free?
It's a promotional right now
Okay,
because they're brand new. They're offering free promotional car washes. And their whole concept is buy unlimited memberships, and then you could wash your car every day for free. About 20 to 25 bucks.
That's great, because there's really nothing in that oval over there. It's around those 4 people that are house.
So, yeah, that opened up yesterday. So, Lola's Pizza Palace, which moved into.
Okay.
How do you spell your last name? C-H-U-P.
You can see the light from my house.
I think, did he prepare that memo that's in here?
Yes.
Was it different? Okay. Consultant.
Thank you. Okay.
Lola's,
They're in the process, they're probably about 2 weeks away from beginning carry-out and delivery services in the new restaurant, and hopefully by mid-February, we'll be open for seating and dining inside. And the Connor commercial property over on Piper Lane, they're getting close to having their certificate of occupancy for their shell building. They're in discussion with a number of users for the industrial building. We still don't have a set user. Depending on the user, they may or may not be coming back in front of us.
Connor building, that the big warehouse?
Yeah.
A while back?
Yeah.
How far are they in construction on that?
They're almost done.
Really?
Yeah, they were able to get 3/4 of the driveway under final lift. Only part of the area in the back because of weather missed out on final lift. The shell's done, floor's in.
So they got a binder down everywhere?
Yeah. So they got lucky. They took advantage of the weather where some of our other builders did not. So that's good. Do you want to announce, it's not any of our previous cases, but we have a new breakfast restaurant in town. Bread and Butter Cafe moved into the space vacated by Lola's at Prospect Crossing. Their hours are 6 a.m. to 3, and their food is delicious.
Bread, what is it?
Bread and Butter.
Where Lola's used to.
Yeah.
What happened to, when we did the special use for, right here, where,
George at the mall?
Yeah.
The owner at the time, and George could not come to terms on a lease, and subsequently that owner sold the mall to the owners of Deli for You, so Deli for You are the owners, and they will be coming in for permits for some expansions, uses. We are going to be losing Harry's Liquor after a long period, 20-some years of business in town because they could not come to lease terms.
That's where across the street, right?
Yeah.
they already closed, didn't they?
No, they're having a closing sale.
Oh, I thought I saw it on
They-
Facebook.
Well, originally it was supposed to be December 31st was their last day, but because of the timing with the new owners, they're giving them a month to month to try and keep making some money, get rid of stock and that kind of stuff, so, but there will be new users in the mall at some point.
Okay.
Last thing I have for you, and it hopefully didn't get mixed up in here. I bet you it did. Where did I put it? Here. Can you please, real quickly, look at this? This is the 2019 attendance to see if this looks right, and then I can verify that, because you guys do get a small stipend, and it's time to pay you for last year.
So can we circulate this after the meeting or during the meeting?
If you want, we can just pass it around after. We can close the meeting.
Perfect. Any other communications?
How about the restaurant that was supposed to go on Elmerston, the cafe, the diner?
The hookah bar?
Was it a hookah bar?
Yeah, the hookah bar, that didn't materialize.
Oh, okay. He was the owner of E&O, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and Menta, which is what he was gonna call our cafe, is what he changed the name to the one at the mall too, so.
And it's dying as well, that.
Yeah.
How about the recreational marijuana? Did the
Go to the foyer. Oh,
city
thanks,
council hear that yet, or where is that?
Yes, they did approve the recommendations. They only approved for a single dispensary in any of the 3 potential areas that we discussed. To date, we've had no interest from a dispensary, but that's because all the people that got the first licenses were owners of medicinal, and they already had facilities. So I expect to have hopefully a wave of folks, coming up here as we get closer to the May second round of licenses. Our big, what we're getting lots of inquiries about now is the craft grow industry, because that's the licenses to be issued in March, and folks need to have locations that are willing to allow them to have up to, what is it, potentially 10,000 square feet. And I've had a lot of interest because people see we passed the cannabis approval, but that was not one of the things that was approved. However, I thought the committee, and I think this is a personal opinion, but if you're gonna have a retail product that's legal, you have a place to manufacture and have to process it. Everybody can't all have the benefits of the sales, retail site. But, and I know a couple places that were entertaining potential grow as users because they were gonna get top dollar rent and stuff, that can't get it now. But at this point in time, I've got 2 brokers who represent properties that are actively marketing to get a retail sales dispensary in town, and we'll see where it goes. And if we do get one, they'll be back before this group, because
We'll need to,
do a special use.
correct. Okay, anything else from the
That's it.
commissioners? Okay, then with no further business, do I hear a motion to adjourn our January 23rd, 2020 Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.